We will make America great again.
RPN is not responsible for the views, actions, statements, or opinions of its guests, advertisers, or even its viewers. The information contained in this program is not to be confused with medical or legal advice. An appearance on this platform is not necessarily an endorsement, but as always, we encourage you to do your own research. Enjoy the show. Good evening, everyone. And of course, welcome back. Yes, my friends, it's time for another very exciting episode of Red Pill News Live. I am back in the studio in sunny Florida. Glad to be home. Hope you guys had a wonderful weekend. I also hope that you were able to survive without my infectious laugh on a daily basis, but this is how it goes. Lots of news happened in the interim, and we're going to go over all of it. Well, as you can tell from the thumbnail, the Supreme Court of the United States has handed down a number of very important rulings. However, the most important ruling of all is soon to come tomorrow. Now, we had some wins and we had some losses. I would suggest, though, that the losses are not perhaps nearly as bad as people might be saying. And as you know, I am probably the most optimistic guy on the internet, so I'm always looking for the angle it's going to take us where we want to go. I think I found it. So if you guys haven't yet, please do me a favor, hit that like button. Help us out by sharing the show. And as you all at this point are well aware, it's time to sit back, relax, and grab your popcorn, because we're going to get into it right about now.
Science proves that a healthy immune system is the body's first defense against the smallest of ailments to the most catastrophic. Coriolus Versicolor is the most sought-after, all-natural supplement for both humans and pets to help boost the immune system. There are over 400 studies worldwide on its effectiveness in humans, including Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, MD Anderson Cancer Center, and now from the University of Pennsylvania School of Veterinary Medicine. Together, we can help reverse this terrible tide now plaguing our loved ones and give them the immune-boosting supplements that they need.
3 boys taught me 2 things. Summer is an adventure and bugs are relentless. As an herbalist, I know you don't need harsh chemicals to protect your family. Here at Tamarack Garden, we've got you covered with natural sunscreen, mosquito and tick repellent that's even safe for your pets, a salve to draw out bug bites, and soothing sunburn cream, all made with the power of plants. Because we think summer memories should last longer than the bug bites. Tamarack Garden, protect your family naturally and eat your weeds.
All right. Oh, that's the wrong button. That is the correct button. Welcome back, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I also want to give a big shout out to my friends over there at Tamarack Garden. Saw them this weekend in the at the Great American Restoration Tour in Deadwood, South Dakota. Had a great time there. Lots of wonderful people. Thank you so much to the people who gave me cards and who gave me gifts. I was able to get all that stuff home. There is also now, I believe, soon to be a soft disclosure Avengers team, which includes myself and Alpha and Ghost and Burning Bright as our characters from the soft disclosure ads. I don't know if it's live yet, but it should be live here pretty soon. Maybe when Lisa gets home from work, she can go ahead and bring me the shirt and I can show you guys. But also, I am going to be interviewing the people from Pet Club this week, and that interview will be coming out on Saturday. So we're going to be having a deeper conversation about turkey tail mushroom, Coriolus versicolor, and obviously the incredible benefits that you get from taking it. And so I encourage you guys to check that out. If you don't get a chance to watch it when it broadcasts, it will be on my Alternative Therapies playlist, which you can find on the homepage of my Rumble channel. Whether you're on mobile or you're on desktop, there will be like a little slider bar, and you can just go to the playlists, and then it will be right there amongst all of those. All right, you guys. So we've got some international stuff that we're going to start with, because I haven't really had an opportunity to talk about the tragic earthquake in Venezuela. And now that the rescue efforts have been ongoing for some time, some really disturbing things have begun to emerge. First of all, though, let me say thank you so much to Esther G over there on Pilled with some shades. Thank you very much, Esther. She says, welcome home, Zach. Miss you. I missed you too, Esther. Always great to see you out there in the chat. And then my very good friend, Warrior Mima, who said, Zach, you are not allowed to go to another guard. Just kidding. I missed you, and I'm glad you're back. Awesome. So glad to be here. Also, you know what? Actually, I do have one more quick sponsor that I need to get to before we get into the international news. All right, you guys. So thank you very much, everybody, for being here. Really do appreciate you. And also, thank you very much to the sponsor right here. So this episode is actually brought to you by Native Path Antarctic Krill Oil. It's packed with omega-3s and astaxanthin, which is great for your heart, joints, and memory. So I'd like everybody here to raise your hand if you're taking fish oil. A lot of people do, especially as you get older. You kind of get told that that's something that you should be taking. But I actually have some news for you, because it might not be what you think it is. It might not even be doing what you think it should be, because research out of the Journal of Agriculture and Food Chemistry have found that fish oil is actually 50% less absorbable than a different kind of omega-3. And that's what today's sponsor is all about, because it has the better version. So if you've been taking fish oil for your heart, your joints, or memory support, here is something that you need to know. Research shows that fish oil is actually 50% less absorbable than krill oil, because fish oil's omega-3s come in a triglyceride form, while the krill oils are in a phospholipid form. And that's the same format that your cell walls are made of. So that means that krill oil gets into your cells almost immediately. In head-to-head studies, when they compare them, krill oil outperforms fish oil at improving your cholesterol, reducing inflammation, and easing joint pain. And it often does it at lower doses. So Native Path Antarctic Krill Oil is sourced from pristine Antarctic waters. It contains powerful antioxidant astaxanthin, and it comes in a tiny soft gel, so you're not going to get any nasty, fishy burps. So go ahead and check them out using the QR code that you see on screen, or you can just go to the website, getkrill.com/redpill. Get, GETKRILL.com/redpill. You can try it risk-free with a 365-day money-back guarantee. So I think that you really can't get much better than that. Thank you so much to them for sponsoring the program. And thank you guys once again for being here. Okay, let us get into the first portion of today's show. So speaking about the earthquakes in Venezuela, there were a couple that hit, and I don't know if anybody's noticed this, but ever since then, there have been a series of earthquakes that are hitting all around the Pacific Rim, the Rim of Fire, and even up into Illinois was the most recent news about an earthquake that I saw. That was only a 3.5 magnitude, and it may have something to do with fracking that's being done there. But there seems to be an uptick in earthquake activity. Now, it was particularly devastating in Venezuela, and I'm sure you guys have seen all kinds of videos of just the most tragic scenes coming out of there. Let me first play for you this one, because initially they had said that they thought that maybe 100,000 people might be dead and missing. And, you know, you hear that number and it's like, wow, that's like a statistic. I don't even know how to like really put that into a framework. If 100,000 people from like my town went missing, I mean, what would that be like? I mean, it would be absolutely unfathomable. But the reason they believed that initially, and I think that the number has come down, but we're still talking tens of thousands of people dead and still missing, is because the earthquake was so powerful that it literally leveled many high-rise apartment buildings and skyscrapers. And I want you to take a look at this video right here and notice the building that's in the back towards the right between the gates as you go straight out. It's just awful. it's just gone. The building just came straight down, and that building would have been filled with people on every floor, in probably every apartment. I have no idea how many people would have been in that building, but it's undeniable that many, many people died as a result. Now, here is a slightly smaller scale, but it's nonetheless devastating. You have this security cam showing a house directly across from somebody else's house, and this house just completely collapses. It appears to be some form of a concrete block home. So people are starting to scream, starting to shake a little bit. And there comes the massive earthquake. Okay, and let me just turn that down because it's just screaming and car alarms going off. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're probably thinking, gosh, don't they? This is like the modern age, right? I mean, why don't they have reinforced construction? I mean, we build with rebar and concrete here in the United States. But the truth of the matter is that standards for construction are very different no matter what country you're in. We build a lot of things out of timber and drywall here in the United States. Modern homes, oftentimes, that's what they're built out of. Lots of plastic. Lots of timber, not old growth timber. This is fairly new, young timber. And of course, drywall. You can pretty much enter a modern home from the outside with a box cutter if you have the wherewithal. But in a big building, of course, they're going to be thinking about things like collapse and the structural integrity. Now, I want you to take a look at this because this might sort of explain why we are seeing the type of devastation that we're seeing. This is the internal of a structural column from one of these apartment buildings in Venezuela. And you can see it's quite literally just a styrofoam core with concrete likely poured in a form around it. And this was taken by one of the rescuers as they were going through the rubble of the buildings and looking for people. Now, we've talked about tofu dreg construction before, and tofu dreg construction is the concept of shoddy construction that originated out of China. Because you would have a lot of situations like this where buildings were put up quickly. They were put up without the necessary means and engineering to support them if something tragic like this did happen. They might use rebar, but that rebar tends to be made from really cheaply produced steel. It might have a bunch of other stuff in there just so that it looks like rebar if you're taking a look at a casual glance. I'm sure that there were probably people who, in the midst of producing this building, they thought to themselves, well, who's going to know? I mean, this building's going up and it's going to stay up. Unless it falls down, nobody's going to be able to figure out that the cores were made out of styrofoam. Well, of course, unfortunately, the worst happened. And I have to wonder, given the years of sanctions that Venezuela was under, they were only doing business with certain nations. And we know that China for a long time has attempted to gain a foothold down in South America. Is it possible that perhaps they had some Chinese construction companies that were putting up these buildings fast and dirty in order to get it done and give people a place to get out of the rain? I don't know. We don't know for sure. But the one thing that I can tell you is that styrofoam is not going to do anything in the middle of a 7.5 earthquake. So Myla Maria Rosa She writes here, the devastating earthquakes in Venezuela exposed exactly how the socialist government built housing for their people. Look at this video from La Guara. The building is in the Mission Vivienda program, and they were constructed using expanded polystyrene panels coated with a thin layer of cement without the reinforced steel and earthquake-resistant concrete that is required for high-rise buildings in seismic coastal areas. The deaths never needed to happen. If they had constructed these buildings correctly, they wouldn't have collapsed. I think that's obvious, you know. Many properly engineered buildings remained standing despite suffering severe damage, but almost all of the government housing complexes collapsed, trapping residents beneath the rubble. That's your communism in action. The end result is death every single time. Now, I want you to keep that in mind because communism is going to play heavily as a theme in today's program. I also want you to think back to the tragic earthquake that took place in Haiti all those years ago and the conspiracy surrounding the theft of children and the Clinton Foundation and Laura Silsby, because it appears that something untoward is happening very similar right now in Haiti. Now, the United States has sent a number of rescue workers and teams there to start assisting. They did it almost immediately. But when they arrived, it looks like there was some type of a problem that the interior minister, a man by the name of Diosdado Cabello, had with these Americans coming in. There seems to be some pushback, like he doesn't want Americans to come in and, I don't know, help to find people in the rubble or help to rescue people. And this is obviously making people in Venezuela very mad. And then people on the internet seeing this video, they're very angry as well. Let's take a look.
There's somebody right over there that can try to help.
So the first question that I think any rational person would ask is why? Why would this man, part of the Venezuelan government, have any problem with foreign rescue workers coming in and helping to save lives? What is he hiding? Well, here I can show you a clip from a local Venezuelan news channel where a mother has reported that her daughter was among the children that were rescued from one of these community tenement buildings that was put up by the Venezuelan government. Now, when the mother went to go look for her child, she found that her child's name had been changed on the official paperwork. And as such, the child had also disappeared. Now, she also indicates that there are other reports of parents whose children seem to have been stolen in the wake of this tragic event. This is not an isolated incident, and she is speaking in Spanish, and it's not subtitled, so I can't translate. But this is the mother right here explaining that her child has been kidnapped. Now, again, remember back to Haiti and think to every single tragic event such as this. It is the perfect opportunity for very evil people, NGOs, child trafficking networks to come in and start taking children because people are going to die. People go missing. Sometimes the parents die and then the children don't have anywhere to go. But she says here the children are being stolen. They're being stripped of their last names and being given other last names. Why can't I find my daughter? This is a Venezuelan mother who was told her daughter had been found and was taken to a hospital. Well, when she got to the hospital has no record of that child ever being there. Evil people, it would seem, are using this earthquake and this tragedy in Venezuela as an opportunity to swoop in and kidnap children and orphans and take kids from their parents before their parents can find them. And then, of course, those children end up on the international child trafficking market. Now, I want you to also remember that these people that would do such a thing, they have an even greater reason to do it right now, because almost as soon as President Trump came into office, he shut down the USAID NGO money pipeline going into nations that would otherwise be seeing these horrible climate catastrophes, these earthquakes, these storms. You haven't heard or seen much about any of those things, except unless it was here in the United States. We've got massive flooding in Kentucky right now. Think about the hurricanes that came through. But USAID and these NGOs would have otherwise been in these foreign countries waiting for something like this to happen so that the children could be scooped up and stolen. And it appears that it is happening in Venezuela right now. Here is another video coming out of Venezuela. This young woman says that a man dressed as a rescue worker who claims to have ties to the inner circle of Delcy Rodriguez, who is, of course, the current president in lieu of Maduro, allegedly came in and was trying to take children. He is described locally as a known sexual abuser in the area. So the people that he's trying to steal these children from are well aware of who this man is. Now, he's actually being caught. So this is potentially not connected to a larger child trafficking network. It could be directly related to one sick individual, but it is yet another piece of evidence showing that this is most certainly happening. Okay, now this woman's video is also in Spanish. So I'm going to go here to show you the man who appears to be wearing a shirt emblazoned with the Venezuelan flag. This could very easily be a uniform for a government worker or a rescue worker. And here he is being arrested by the Venezuelan police. And it does appear, yep, he's got a embroidery which says official, making himself out to be a member of the Venezuelan government. And there is a badge on the other side of his shirt. You can see it just for a moment right there as he is turned by the police. So it would appear that there is no shortage of sick and opportunistic pedophiles who are going to swoop in for an opportunity like this. So then you might ask, well, what exactly are they doing with these children? Where do these children go? Well, funny enough, there is a website called Vinted. It is a second-hand website. I believe it's based out of the UK. But here, someone looking through listings found what appears to be a listing for a toy. But when you look at the details of the listing, there are some aspects of it which seem to indicate that this is merely code for children, a lot like what we saw with the Wayfair scandal many years ago. So this page discovered where missing Venezuelan children from the earthquake are being sold. They post a toy, but read the description. So take a look here. And this is, it's all in Spanish, but we can divine what we need to from it. Figurine. And it says that, well, let's go to the translated version of it right here. Okay. Rescued Venezuelan plushie from the earthquake. And it says that it is 6 years old and 116 centimeters. Now, this toy would be maybe 10, 15 centimeters. 116 centimeters is the size of a small child. 6 years old is not the way that you would characterize the details of a toy either. But they say that it's Littlest Pet Shop. And of course, they have a picture of it. This is not an ad for a toy. This is clearly an ad for a child. Now, there are many different examples of this, and people, activists on the internet, are already reaching out to Vinted and doing what they can to make sure that the people who are involved in this are going to be held accountable. Now, one final thing, a man who is from the UK is there working to save people from the rubble and pull them out. And he also says that he is coming across these situations where children are being stolen. So I think that this is firmly outside of the box of a conspiracy theory at this point. This is undoubtedly happening.
I was watching videos coming out of Venezuela, and what's going on there is worse than what we can imagine. Now, I don't have all the answers. All I can do is use my platform and my following to raise awareness on this issue, because apparently a lot of the people looking for family members, the police and military aren't allowing them to get to the areas that they need to get to. But the real disturbing thing that's going on is that apparently they are taking traumatized and orphaned children to use for child trafficking, which breaks my heart, obviously, because, well, I mean, how evil can you get? I mean, to use something as horrific as what's happened to then go to the next step and then start taking the children is just a stain on humanity.
It is a stain on humanity, but you know what? This is not new. And everybody here in the chat, we have been talking about this for many, many years. We have been doing what we can to raise awareness for this. And I want you to realize how important this moment is in history, not just for the United States, but for the entire world. The Overton window has shifted, and people generally, normies, at regular average people, are now recognizing that this is a problem. This is a global problem. And there are certain things that you look for. And when it happens, you got to talk about it and you got to say something. Because if people are allowed to get away with it, then obviously these kids are never going to be found again. You know, even here in the United States, we still have hundreds of thousands of children, unaccompanied migrant children that came here, that were trafficked here, and then were put by the Biden administration into the hands of known pedophiles. Most people here, I feel like, do not appreciate the fact that the Trump administration, even though we haven't had an arrest of a Hillary Clinton, the Trump administration has found tens of thousands of those children, and they are finding more of those children every day. And every single day, there are more pedophiles that are being arrested. There are more abusers that are being arrested. There are more child trafficking and abuse networks around the world that the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security's in special investigations are taking down, and the DOJ is prosecuting. It is open season on pedophiles and child abusers. And I want to say God bless Donald Trump and God bless the administration for the fact that they're doing that. I hope that somebody within his administration is paying attention to this specific situation that's happening there right now, because this is not something we can afford to turn a blind eye to. And the people of Venezuela, my heart is with you. Praise Jesus, all of you that were able to successfully make it out of that horrible situation. But there is a lot of work that needs to be done. And I'm so happy that the people of Venezuela are attuned to what is happening right now. You guys, we are past the point of people talking about the scourge of child trafficking in hushed circles, or being made to feel like you're the weirdo. You bring this up at work. Aren't you worried about children being trafficked? No. We are far past that. This is now topic number one. This is open, this is known, and we are dealing with it. Now, we can never go too hard on pedophiles. I will say that right now. But this is the first time in our history where this is now no longer an open secret, and people are actually taking action. I want to say, God bless Donald Trump. Thank you so much, sir, for what you're doing. Let me say thank you very much to Denise Ann. Denise Ann. Zach C. Springfield, Missouri, where I live, has 169,000 people according to the last census. So that would be 2/3 of my city's population. That is so crazy. Sad thinking about that scale. Absolutely. I mean, it's, you hear the story of one child. Like over the weekend, there was a story about a young girl, a 15, 16-year-old girl who was on a boat with her friends, and she went to the bathroom and then disappeared. And so that one girl's information is plastered everywhere. I mean, she was a beautiful young girl. I mean, it was tragic to think that something might have happened to her. And they searched for her for 5 days, and then they found her body. I saw it announced this morning that this young woman is dead. And it's tragic. You know, one child, the picture, the story, the impact on the family, that tends to go pretty far. But when you talk about 100,000 people dying, a lot of people are just like, that can't be real. I can't imagine that's real. Or I don't even know what to think about that, because like Denise said, it is like nearly 2/3 of the city that you're living in. It's absolutely tragic. We need to be thinking about this on the exact same scale. One child dead is just as bad as 100,000 dead. And certainly this is something that needs to be paid attention to. Also, thank you to Principled Enigma, who says, go to Dutch Sense on YouTube. I follow him, which is why I mentioned the 3.5 magnitude earthquake related to the fracking, because I saw it on his channel. This guy is definitely a mind blower when it comes to his knowledge on tectonic geology and his ability to predict earthquakes 2 weeks ahead of time with 97% accuracy. Absolutely. If everybody here has never watched any of Dutch Sense's work, this is definitely somebody you should be following, because he does have the ability to predict earthquakes. You can predict earthquakes if you just listen to his methodology and practice it. Of course, the USGS claims that's impossible on a weekly basis. Dutch Sense proves them wrong left and right, notwithstanding the fact that the USGS has literally conducted lawfare against him. Yeah, they do not want him out there speaking, and they've tried to take him down on multiple occasions. AOB 22 says not enough millstones. I also heard the wood chipper manufacturers are hiring. Yeah, we need to go buy some wood chipper stock, methinks. Let me also say, once again, Denise, who says millstones for a single person that is harming or involved in any way with harming these innocent children. My heart hurts so much for these babies. I just pray every single day that these children are going to be found, and that obviously what's happening in Venezuela is it's taking a lot of people's attention, and I hope that the people who are surviving and are going to be working together within their community are going to be able to get to these children, are going to be able to get them back, and that perhaps the United States government is going to assist in helping to make sure that these children are found. Thank you very much, Denise. Also, thank you to No Thanks Joe, who says, no, so nice to see you, Zach. Thank you for, welcome you back home, and safe and sound. And I hope you both had a successful and fun trip in your recent travels. And I must say, it's great to see your reporting. God bless and be safe. Thank you so much. God bless. Be safe to you as well, friend. Filter Dog also says Haiti lost 200 to 300,000 people in that 2010 earthquake. Exactly. And then, of course, the true number of children who went missing afterwards, it's unfathomable, because, of course, they give you that number, and that's an official number coming from my opinion from child traffickers. And so how many of those kids were not dead? And then how many of those kids were part of the trafficking that ended up taking place? Also, Principled Enigma, wood chippers don't work well on people, too much water. I'm not going to ask how you know that, buddy. All right. Now, we also do have some new information about Jeffrey Epstein. Now, this is kind of disturbing as well. I'll tell you why. But if you'll remember, Irina Zarutska, Irina Zarutska is that young woman who was stabbed to death on the train in North Carolina. Jeffrey Epstein's Ukrainian girlfriend, it turns out, was licensed as a dentist in New Mexico. Of course, that is where Zorro Ranch is. And what is going on? They are killing the story for me. They don't want to talk about it. So Jeffrey Epstein wrote to his girlfriend and his assistant back in 2016, and he gave her a request. He said, please get oxygen for the dental office. I'm sure all of you remember that dental chair, which was seen in the pictures of Jeffrey Epstein's estates. It was theorized that it could either be a dental chair, it could be an esthetician's chair. And why they don't want me to talk about this story, guys. At some point, I bet you the Santa Fe New Mexican is going to make it so that I can't refresh the story any longer. But either way, he wrote to her and told her to get some oxygen for the dental office for New York and New Mexico. So that would insinuate that the girlfriend, Karina Shuliak, was actually doing dental work in both states. Now, he also instructed her to travel with anesthetic. Of course, that's also something you're going to use as a dentist. But the message to Karina Shuliak is, of course, even more on the nose, because she graduated from dental school back in 2015. And wouldn't you know it, she also applied to practice in New Mexico and in the U.S. Virgin Islands. Now, of course, those are two major locations where Jeffrey Epstein had his properties. We had Little St. James in the Virgin Islands and then Zorro Ranch in New Mexico. Now, we actually have her New Mexico registration and licensing for the practice of general dentistry. And we can see that right here with her picture and all of her relevant information, Dr. Karina Shuliak. And she lists her address as 301 East 66th Street, apartment 8, I think that's 8H, in New York City. Now, the proposed name for her dental practice was Zorro Smiles, and wouldn't you know it, the location of her dental practice was Epstein's Zorro Ranch at 49 Zorro Ranch Road. Now, we don't have any evidence to say that she was actually taking clients there. I would say it's more likely that she was probably doing dental work on the girls that Jeffrey Epstein was trafficking. But in order to get yourself registered as a dentist, you've got to have an address. And of course, you've got to have that certification on hand with the state. But we do have several emails that were part of the Justice Department's release, which shows that Jeffrey Epstein and Karina Shuliak were talking about dental related things. And in one email, he instructed the manager of the ranch to unplug a dental chair pump, which I would assume, I don't have a dental chair, but, you know, they've got to raise them and lower them. Now, the reason this is all coming out right now is because there is the ongoing Truth Commission investigation in New Mexico. So we find that Karina Shuliak was licensed in New Mexico as a dentist from August of 2015 until 2021, after the time that Jeffrey Epstein was allegedly killed in prison. Now, that was also from records found with the New Mexico Board of Dental Health. The U.S. Department of Justice files and public licensure information show that she became licensed first in the U.S. Virgin Islands and Florida. Of course, Jeffrey Epstein also had a property down here in Florida in was it Palm Beach? Yeah, Palm Beach. Now, here is that picture of the dental chair that I was talking about. You probably remember that. It's a large yellow dental chair, and then you have these very creepy masks of unidentified men's faces on the walls. These are very odd, and similar types of masks were found adorning the walls of some or at least one of the men that Jeffrey Epstein was associated with that was most likely engaging in the same type of behavior that he was. Now, that all came out as part of the DOJ's release of information. Now, you also probably remember that Zorro Ranch was conveniently not searched by anyone in law enforcement after Jeffrey Epstein's arrest, even though all of his other properties were. And so a lot of people have considered the fact that Jeffrey Epstein's connections in New Mexico were such that the people he was involved in relationships with were so powerful that they ensured that Zorro Ranch would never be looked into. Of course, given the conversations that Jeffrey Epstein was having with the people that he was likely trafficking women with, Zorro Ranch would have been a very, very interesting and information and evidence-filled place to go ahead and look. So this New Mexico Legislative Truth Commission, currently investigating Jeffrey Epstein, published a subpoena on Friday. That subpoena was to the Regulation and Licensing Department. They were looking for these records that we've seen right here. They wanted to see also if there was anything else related to licensures that would have been granted to anybody at Zorro Ranch, or if perhaps there were any ambulance services that had ever been run to the ranch, because there was another message, diary entry almost from a young girl who said that she had a baby at Zorro Ranch, and that baby was taken from her by Ghislaine Maxwell. And then, of course, we also know that Jeffrey Epstein had a plan in a sort of a mad scientist sort of way to produce perfect babies, essentially, using his genes and DNA and seed, mixing it with these beautiful European women that were essentially lured in as models. Jeffrey Epstein was completely obsessed with this stuff, just as the Nazis were. Now, the chair of this commission, Andrea Romero, she's a Democrat representing Santa Fe, gave an interview on Friday, and she said, "We heard all about allegations of different medical procedures being done at Zorro Ranch and people waking up around medical equipment, and this has been alleged quite a bit. And so any new information that we can have, it sounds like you have some information that maybe we need, and it would be really interesting to put that together and see everything that's going on." It's almost like the people out here with us researching Jeffrey Epstein know more about the situation than the people who are actually investigating him in a legal sense. And I don't think that that's a coincidence. That's by design. So Jeffrey Epstein purchased Zorro Ranch in 1993. He owned it up until his alleged death in 2019. And Karina Shuliak was listed as the primary beneficiary of Epstein's trust. And it was the last call that he made was to her shortly before he allegedly died. And he planned to give her $100 million and his homes, including the ranch. I believe that included Little St. James as well. Now, the article asks, why would Jeffrey Epstein want private dental offices at his properties? Well, I can think of a couple of different reasons. Obviously, if you're going to be trafficking young women from Eastern Europe or from various nations around the world where perhaps they didn't have access to proper dental care, they may come in with cavities or even with missing teeth, or they might need braces, something to make their smiles look better. They might have even been doing veneers or caps or something like that. But the most nefarious reason of all that I could think that you might want a licensed dentist there on the property is if you needed to get rid of a body. You also might remember that there seemed to be a tale of Jeffrey Epstein having what people thought was a private crematorium on site. And of course, one of the best ways, sans DNA, to identify a body is to compare their teeth and dental records to dental records that may be on file. Now, if you're a dentist, then you've probably pulled a few teeth in your time. And if you are murdering girls, or girls are dying in your care as they're being trafficked, or perhaps they're being abused by wealthy men who pay to do that abusing, it stands to reason that you may need to get rid of a couple of bodies. And of course, there is also stories of bodies having been disposed in the public lands right behind Jeffrey Epstein's property there at Zorro Ranch. Now, a report from the New York Times earlier this year found that Jeffrey Epstein sought medical care for himself and the women that were in his stable. And they also, of course, had a number of doctors that Jeffrey Epstein would call for specific things. If OBGYN, if there was something wrong with the girls' private parts, or if they needed them to just be looked into. I'm sure you'll remember there was also the woman, Julianne, and I'm sorry, I forgot her name, but she, what was her last name? Juliette Rose Bryant. Juliette Rose Bryant, who is a survivor of Jeffrey Epstein's trafficking network. She's in the flight logs, and she's also received some negative attention online because people didn't believe her story. She's obviously, sadly been very damaged by her experience, but she's actually in the files, and she has the records to show it. And she's got some photographs of herself with the people that Jeffrey Epstein was hanging out with at the time. She's also the young woman who's on Jeffrey Epstein's dinner table. I believe it was in his New York apartment. And there is a doctor performing some type of minor surgery on her in the living room. It turns out after Juliette saw that photograph was released, she identified herself. She gave some identifying features, which you can see in the photograph. And she was on a quad. They were so maybe this was at the Palm Beach or perhaps the Little St. James property. I can't remember exactly, but they were on quads, and she crashed, or she flew off, and she got quite a nasty gash above her eye. And Jeffrey Epstein called one of his doctor friends in. You also remember from all of the various files, there were all kinds of celebrity doctors and people who, by all rights, should not be hanging out with a predator like Jeffrey Epstein. So Epstein was in the habit of having these people around. It makes a lot of sense that he would have a dentist on staff with himself. And many of the girls that Jeffrey Epstein was accused of trafficking, again, were from overseas. They were from areas that made them more vulnerable to being sucked in. Eastern European girls could very easily be drawn in as potential models. Of course, Jeffrey Epstein had the modeling world all locked up as well. And there was one email where Epstein was thanked by a woman who had been given dental care, and she was from Lithuania, and she said she had never even seen a dentist. So the medical license for Christina Shuliak with the Board of Dental Health Care was approved in a one-line email. Grant K. Sulika, a general dentistry license for the state of New Mexico. That was from the board chair at the time, Dr. Burl Tucker, on August 12th of 2015. He misspelled her name, which is maybe why it wasn't found when people looked for it before. And there's no complaints about Christina Shuliak. There seems to be nothing other than what we've already mentioned. So it is obviously an ongoing investigation, and what I will be looking for specifically is to see if they do find any bodies or bones, or more specifically, skulls without teeth in the hills behind Zorro Ranch. Tragic stuff, but again, we have made it through the Overton window, and this stuff is no longer secret. All right. Also, thank you to Darla, who says, thank you again, Zach. I appreciate your hard work. However, Candy on BitChute just called me an ignorant slut. Did she, Candy? Why? Darla is not an ignorant slut, unless you're doing that Saturday Night Live sketch. Jane, you ignorant slut. Either way, it's funny. L.A. Martinez, the Truth Commission is made up of all the dumb Dems in New Mexico. Only saw the white blonde young woman there when I was there back in the day. So many rumors of several buried bodies near the west end of the landing strip. You are absolutely correct. However, unfortunately, it seems like those are the only people in the state of New Mexico who are available to do the investigations. Certainly the state police, the New Mexico Board of Investigation, or the Bureau, rather, of Investigation. Nobody else did it. So even though they might be Democrats, I am perfectly willing to allow them to do this investigation so that we can get more information, because otherwise, it seems to be not happening. Principled Enigma, thank you again. Appreciate that. All right. And then one more piece on Jeffrey Epstein. So Leon Black of the Apollo Group was brought in for James Comer and the others on the House Oversight Committee to answer some questions about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. In a nutshell, Leon Black said, I never trafficked girls. I never saw Jeffrey Epstein trafficking girls. And of course, a lot of people called an audible, because there were a number of Epstein victims who specifically remember Leon Black being particularly sadistic in the way that he treated these young women and young girls. So Leon Black was one of Jeffrey Epstein's main financiers. He spent a lot of money on Jeffrey Epstein, and Leon Black would have us believe that Jeffrey Epstein stole money from him. Not that he was blackmailed, not that he was paying for a service that only men like him could possibly want. But James Comer had wanted to know about Leon Black and Jeffrey Epstein's non-disclosure agreements. And it would appear that Leon Black did not want to answer questions about those non-disclosure agreements. So it's going to be taken to the next level by James Comer and the committee. Let's take a listen.
All right. We have concluded our first hour, the majority hour of the deposition with Leon Black. I have just issued 2 subpoenas to Mr. Black, one for all the NDAs that he is party to, and second for a deposition on July 16th.
So let's just hash this one out before we get into deep. If you've signed an NDA with a man who is now dead, then what's the harm in revealing the nature of that NDA? Unless, of course, that NDA had something to do with overt, perverse sexual activity with the same girls that Jeffrey Epstein was trafficking. Now, that would make sense. That would certainly make sense. I could understand why Leon Black wouldn't want to talk about that. But the only thing is, now that a subpoena is forthcoming, Leon Black isn't going to have the option not to talk about it.
This is a result of refusing to answer specific questions about the NDAs and the
what's up, Illinois Danny?
The terms. We believe that information is vital to our investigation. I will remind everyone that Mr. Black came in voluntarily, but they are refusing to disclose that. So I have issued the subpoena, and we're handing it to him as we speak.
The subpoena is for him to appear again?
To appear for a deposition and for the NDAs.
And have those officially been sent off?
The subpoena's in hand at this second. It was delivered as I was walking out the door.
And I mean, what prompted this? I know you said that he's not answering questions. Is he being combative and not answering those questions? Is he saying he has no information to share, or he's saying he doesn't want to give up?
His response was that he wasn't allowed to discuss the terms of the NDAs.
Can't discuss the terms of an NDA with a dead man. Yeah, that doesn't jive.
The NDAs are between him and other women. We want to know, was Jeffrey Epstein involved?
Over on YouTube, Spicy Spana. I'm sorry. Spicy Spana, I've driven past that ranch several times. Perfect place to hide. The Zorro Ranch sign was removed immediately. Bill Richardson was allegedly involved, I believe. Governor is corrupt. Yeah. Bill Richardson was an associate of Jeffrey Epstein. It was another governor of New Mexico that actually sold the property to Jeffrey Epstein, and his name escapes me, but I did a big dive on that at the time because I wanted to get to the bottom of it. But you are correct. A number of former New Mexico governors were directly involved in Jeffrey Epstein's dealings. But the other one I wanted to say was, Eye of State. Microphones in teeth. That's an excellent idea. Microphones or tracking devices could have been put in their teeth. If those girls had a sort of like a tracker, a GPS locator in their molar, and then that cap was put on, they would never be able to escape. And it might explain why people were unable to get away from Jeffrey Epstein.
The NDAs, was he involved in?
Bruce King. Thank you so much, Rufus. Bruce King, former Governor Bruce King. Appreciate you.
Writing, was he involved in awarding funds to the women for the NDAs? What was the reason for the NDAs? We will know everything about the NDAs. So
Leon Black says, I never abused any girls, but he certainly did pay out a lot of money and then require those young women to stay quiet and never talk about the supposed heinous and sadistic abuse that they suffered at the hands of Leon Black. Those NDAs most certainly need to come out.
That's very important to our investigation. So the subpoenas were issued. We expect to see him back here in a few weeks.
I mean, do you kind of get the sense that he will answer those questions under oath? Did he indicate that in any way?
Well, I mean, everyone in America is keeping up with this investigation. I don't think it's any secret that we need that information. We've spoken with certain people about the potential for these NDAs. I'm going to be very careful what I say. We need the NDAs to be able to move forward with the investigation. I'm surprised that they knew what we needed when we came in here. We were hoping we would get it. We didn't. So the subpoena has been issued, and we're serious. We're going to get those NDAs.
All right. Now, of course, any of the girls that signed an NDA, they're not going to be able to speak about what happened to them or the circumstances under which they were forced to sign those NDAs, because somebody like Leon Black is going to go ahead and sue them for talking about it. Now, the presence of an NDA in and of itself is not necessarily an indication of guilt. However, you look at the circumstances. The NDA was signed probably with Jeffrey Epstein as a means of keeping their specific business arrangement secret. Certainly, that is something that is suspect. The NDA signed between Leon Black and the girls, contingent upon their acceptance of a payoff. Certainly, that is suspect. NDAs are frequently signed when settlements are reached in legal disputes. Most often, it is because the party that is guilty wants to make sure that in receipt for the payoff, the person alleging the crimes or the behavior that they're going to stay quiet once they receive the payoff. But, you know, I mean, there are all kinds of reasons why NDAs might be a good idea in business or in matters where deals are being reached. But situation with Jeffrey Epstein and payoffs of young women who were abused, that is definitely something that needs to come out. All right. Thank you also once again to Principled Enigma, who says, man, am I ever glad I got that virtual ticket for GART. I understand why you never read my last post last week. No problem. How long will the GART videos remain available? Hope I can be there next year. So I guess I must have missed your last post last week because I didn't actually try to not read it. And yeah, so I don't know what you said, but maybe it was in relation to the virtual, you know, basically as soon as I closed the stream, I got out of my house and we had to get on the move. So yeah, sorry if I missed something that you had sent over. Also, okay, I read that one as well. Okay, now let me say I have one more sponsor from over here on Rumble, and let me just pull this up. Okay. All right, guys. So I want to say thank you very much to the good people at Neutronics Labs. You can go right now if you are a man and you're looking to increase your stamina, boost your energy levels, help grow muscle mass, help recover from working out, or you just want to be as optimal as you possibly can as you are aging and as you are trying to take care of yourself, then Man's Edge Testosterone Booster is a product that I wholeheartedly recommend. It's got 2,500 nanograms of IGF-1. I've spoken with Dr. Bruce Fong here on the channel about the benefits of IGF-1 on many different occasions. You can find those interviews in the playlist on my channel. It's also got a whole host of other ingredients that are great for men as you age, including Tribulus terrestris, fenugreek, long jack, L-arginine, L-citrine, and it's got a nitrous oxide booster. So this is something that is going to help you as you are trying to keep your body in peak conditioning. And it's also going to help increase your body's natural testosterone levels without having to take unnatural products. What's also great about this is that they are offering a special deal right now. When you go to neutronicslabs.com/red pill, you will get 50% off Man's Edge when you sign up for auto ship. And they will also throw in a free bottle of IGF-1 completely free of charge. You stack those together and you're going to get the best benefits. And I can't say enough good things about it. They are great people. And this is a completely natural American product. And when you use the code REDPILL, you're also going to get an extra 10% off. So to get the 50% off, you got to sign up for the auto ship. If you don't want to keep the auto ship, you can cancel it. But at the very least, you'll get your first order completely half off, and then you get the free IGF-1. It is something that I would recommend to any men out there who want to maintain their edge as they age. And while you're there, check out all of the other products that they have, because they do have great stuff for women as well. But once again, neutronicslabs.com/red pill, 50% off when you auto ship, and a free platinum bottle of IGF-1 will be thrown in. Use the code red pill, get 10% off. Thank you so much to the good people at Neutronics Labs. Okay, now, moving on, we got to talk about Iran. So over the weekend, the peace deal and the MOU appeared to fall apart. But there were some interesting things happening in the region at the exact same time. There appeared to be an attack from Iranian interests on a ship going through the Strait of Hormuz. My good friend, Ghost of Base Patrick Henry, wrote a really great article about the ship, which is owned by the Evergreen Company, that appears to have been the subject of this breakdown. So the Strait of Hormuz was open. You had traffic going in one direction and traffic coming out in another direction. This ship from Evergreen attempted to go and circumvent those shipping routes and go near the Oman border. Well, that didn't fly. Nobody died in these attacks, but it appears that the Americans responded, and there were some bombs and some missiles that were sent into areas of Iran. And during the course of this attack, something was happening in Iraq. Now, long and the short of it is, Iran and the U.S. have halted all hostilities. Now they are meeting in Doha, Qatar tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken. And the talks are going to continue, and they're still looking at this 60-day time frame, at the end of which they will be able to have the long-lasting peace that President Trump has been talking about. So this vessel was struck in the Strait on Friday, and then Saturday as well, and the back and forth of firing commenced. And then very quickly this morning, everything seems to be back in order. But let me show you what happened in Iraq. So there was a series of raids that happened on Iraqi politicians. And this appears to be an anti-corruption investigation where Iraqi politicians were getting payoffs in American dollars. They were basically stealing from their own people. And then, of course, they were enriching themselves. So the DOJ in Iraq just released this full body cam footage from one of these corruption busts. And all of these people are politicians. You've got Sunnis and Shiite politicians that were arrested. So it's not a religious faction bust or anything like that. But inside, they found hidden rooms, hidden compartments in everybody's homes. And it's quite clear that these people have been on the take for a very long time. I mean, going back to like Anwar al-Awlaki or whatever his name is, like shortly after 9/11, when we got a new government set up in there, the corruption has been ongoing. Most of these raids occurred in the green zone, which is where the U.S. troops used to be, like the place that was supposed to be the safest. Now it's basically like an enclave for rich Iraqi politicians. Okay, so this is in Arabic, so we can't hear it. But you can see here, these are the Iraqi agents, and there is seemingly some kind of a safe built into the wall behind that panel, and they're going to open it up and wait till you see what's inside. That is a stack. The entire wall is just filled. Well, they got to get through this fake wall right here. There we go. Get inside. And there's another safe. So obviously they want to make sure that nobody ever finds this stuff. But open that door and it's a vault. And inside the vault, of course, massive amounts of wealth and riches. So you got a couple of more doors with a couple of more areas to hide stuff. Boom. Stacks and stacks and stacks of US dollars. What do we got there? A gun, maybe? Yep. Each one of those bundles of bills, they are $100 bills. So millions upon millions of dollars found in these secret areas of these Iraqi politicians' homes. I mean, each one of those bundles is probably $100 grand. Easy. All fresh, brand new $100 bills. Now, of course, as soon as people saw this happening, they thought, well, gosh, is the U.S. assisting Iraqi feds to basically help them take down these corrupt Iraqi politicians? But the Iraqi government has responded and said the U.S. didn't help us. We did this on our own. But it could have been anybody from the region that is now aligned with the United States that helped go in there and bust these people. Let me show you now a couple of still images from these busts so you can get a look at some of this cash directly up front. Okay, so what's interesting here is you've got a picture of Soleimani and the Ayatollahs here. Now, I when I first saw this, I was like, God, is this AI? I mean, this just looks too perfect. But it's a little grainy, but nobody has community noted it. And there just keeps coming more and more pictures of the exact same thing. So you got money that's hidden in the ceiling up here. And here, oh, shoot, hold on. I pulled up the wrong bookmark. Let me show you another one. Because these are both male and female politicians. Here we go. This is the one that I wanted to show you. Okay. Okay, right here in this fraud crackdown, this is a pro-Iranian Shiite MP, Aliyah Nassif. Now, it's been said before that some of the bad actors in the current Iraqi government were aligned with the mullahs and the more radicalized elements of the Iranian government. So I think that the only thing that I'm certain of is that these arrests are connected to the corruption takedown that has been going on in Iran as well. Now, this photograph right here is the female politician who was actually busted. And this woman has a diamond that she wears. And the diamond is like the size of a prune. Like, it's so freaking big. This is Iraqi special forces going in and doing the busts in the green zone. And as far as I know, this is still ongoing. I mean, you've got people who are attempting to leave the country, who are attempting to find their way out. This post right here from Geo Insider, there were people that were suggesting, like, okay, so this is perhaps a crackdown by Shiites. Shiites are taking out the Sunnis, or the Sunnis are taking out the Shiites. But the Iraqi Federal Commission of Integrity is who is actually running these investigations, and they have since commented on the series of arrests that have taken place. They are judicial arrest warrants that are being executed against people who are across the political spectrum, and they're all accused of misappropriating public funds. So the commission says the operation is being conducted strictly under Iraqi law and as the result of coordination between the judicial, executive, and legislative authorities. Iraqi state media, citing senior sources, now report the arrest of MPs, which are like members of Congress, Mohammed al-Karbouli and Aliyah Nassif on corruption charges. That was Aliyah Nassif's safe room that we saw there. This is important because al-Karbouli is a Sunni, while Nassif is a prominent Shiite. The confirmed names, therefore, do not support the initial theory of a crackdown directed exclusively against the Sunni opposition. So the overnight raids appear to be part of a broader anti-corruption campaign ordered by Prime Minister Ali al-Zaidi, following judicial warrants and investigations that expanded after the detention of former Deputy Oil Minister Adnan al-Jumali. Now, the fact that it's the oil minister is obviously very interesting. Perhaps he was assisting in the smuggling of Iranian oil during the time when they were under sanctions. And they say we should still remain cautious because a much longer list is circulating online. And yes, there have only been a couple of confirmed named people who have been arrested, but the number of videos that are coming out of various political homes that are being found to have just massive stores of cash, and it's all U.S. dollars. There's no euros, there's no Iraqi money or anything like that. This is most likely going to be a huge investigation, and it should be transformative for the region. So I'm really looking forward to seeing where it goes. Let me see. Ray Carr says, no, who said that? No, Tom says, when is this going to happen here in the United States? Lots of politicians laundering money and still walking free. Well, I agree with you. And what I have seen is a tightening of the circle. You've got politicians that have been indicted and taken in from Mexico. I think that those Mexican politicians lead us closer to American politicians. I think likely the same thing you are seeing in nations around the world, whether it's from the Epstein investigation or from broader corruption investigations. All of those investigations bring us closer to taking down who's here in the United States. I look at this in the same way that I look at the anti-corruption efforts that have been undertaken by the Trump administration since he came into power. We began by taking down USAID, which was a CIA slush fund that was using NGOs to pump money into these corrupt extra-governmental organizations, as well as into the accounts of Democrat and leftist politicians. Right now, the Democrat Party is in shambles. We will go into that in more detail in a little bit. But also, we had a changing of the guard at the Department of Justice. The grand conspiracy RICO investigations are ongoing in Florida right now. There are multiple grand jury RICO investigations. And as I said last week, I think that before we see anything such as what you are opining there, Tom, we have to have the full confirmation of Todd Blanche. We need to have a Department of Justice that is firmly in the control of one man who is a completely devoted to President Trump, and even more importantly, devoted to the anti-corruption efforts that are required to make America great again. And don't take for granted all of the cleaning house that was necessary during that first year that President Trump was in office. We've seen a tremendous amount of people that have been cleaned out of the DOJ and the FBI. We can't take for granted just how large the federal government is and how easy it's been for these people to get these criminal activities rolling all the time because they have their fingers in every pie. They are in control of quite literally everything. So that cleanup effort must take place before we get into the full accountability phase, because otherwise we're just going to be throwing stuff at the wall and seeing if it sticks, and they're going to be able to overcome it. And that is not what we want. We want people to be indicted. We want them to be tried, and we want them to be imprisoned. And we want to make sure that nothing gets past them. Let's see. Principal Enigma says, how long will those videos remain available on Guard? They will remain available forever, as long as you purchased a virtual ticket. So don't rush. You'll be able to watch them all. And he says the last drop was a request for a coupon code, but the discount was already in your link. Okay. Yeah, there you go. Let me see. Okay. And also thank you to Filter Dog, who says $100 bills have trackable serial numbers. Excellent point. They are going to be able to determine the exact provenance of all of that money. Let me also, just on the subject of oil, President Trump over the weekend also announced an investigation into price gouging of Americans for the price of gas at the pump, because although the price of crude oil continues to drop, the oil companies are not reflecting that in the prices that they are giving to American people. And President Trump has essentially put those oil barons, those modern day oil barons, on notice. I think that in the same way they can track those dollars that are going to be in the walls of those Iraqi politicians, they're also able to track the chemical composition of oil that has been transiting around the world. And so there are many different ways that these people are currently being mapped and being investigated. So my opinion is that the administration is cooking, and we just got to wait for it we got to wait for the bread to rise and for the crust to form. Thank you to Felter Dog. I remember the pallets of cash sent to Iran. Exactly. Pallets of cash. Sean Joe, thank you for the shades and the cookie. Super D, thank you for 1, 2, 3, 4 cookies. Thank you, homie. And then Sean Joe, thank you for a cookie. And P-Quest, thank you for a cookie as well. All right. Something that flew under the radar over the weekend was a very important executive order that President Trump signed. You know, when President Trump signed the executive order related to the production of certain chemicals that were necessary for the farming industry, people freaked out. They said, oh, President Trump is protecting Bayer and Monsanto and the makers of glyphosate. That wasn't what he was doing, and I talked about it at the time, and hopefully you guys remember. But with this executive order, with that executive order, President Trump was protecting the American food chain, and he was protecting farmers, because if we had a collapse of the American agricultural industry, then that would be catastrophic for Americans. People would go hungry, but it would also be catastrophic for the rest of the world. Now, President Trump has signed another executive order, which is also 100% pro-farmer and is designed to get us off of the fertilizer industry and off of Roundup and glyphosate and all of that. And I'm surprised that more people haven't been talking about this. So this executive order advances what's called regenerative agriculture. And we've talked about this before, but you might not have heard me mention it. It was an announcement that was made by Secretary Brooke Rollins and RFK Jr. Essentially, they are unlocking billions of dollars in funding from the USDA to help farmers make the transition from traditional chemical-heavy agriculture to regenerative farming. So this is right on the heels of this executive order. The U.S. Department of Agriculture has simultaneously announced a final regenerative feedstock rule, which is a landmark action that will help farmers voluntarily capture new value from regenerative agricultural practices through biofuel markets. So the announcement builds on President Trump's historic record of support for American agriculture and domestic biofuels. And he delivered, of course, year-round E15. You know, that's one thing. A lot of people would say, I don't want to even use this stuff in my car. But if you take a look at the cost of diesel, if we have the ability to unlock biodiesel that is cheaper for American farmers, then that is obviously a much better thing. And of course, just getting prices down by allowing E15 to flow more freely. That's great. He also established the renewable volume obligations for the farmers and extended the 45Z clean fuel credit production for the working families through the tax cuts. And he has consistently expanded markets for American farmers while strengthening U.S. energy independence. So Brooke Rollins said, today's USDA regenerative feedstock rule put farmers, not Washington bureaucrats, in the driver's seat. Instead of mandates, we're creating market opportunities. Farmers who choose to implement regenerative practices will have new opportunities to earn premium prices, lower their input cost, improve soil health, and strengthen the long-term profitability of their operations. So basically, it's going to make it cheaper for the farmers to produce food. It's going to allow them to do it without having to spend all this money on bug killer and on agricultural fertilizers. And it's going to make the soil health better as well. So the regenerative feedstock rule establishes a framework to connect regenerative agriculture practices to new markets within the biofuel supply chain for corn, soybeans, sorghum, and spring canola. So there is a number of efforts that they are undertaking to make it easier for farmers to get off of that traditional way of farming and to move themselves into regenerative farming. It's better for us when we eat this food. It's better for the land, and it's better for the farmers because it's going to allow them to get away from all of the chemicals. RFK had said, you know, farmers who engage in regenerative farming, they don't have the consistent exposure to these chemicals, and it's going to help make sure that they stay healthier throughout the course of their life. So this was pretty big news, and it seemed like most people didn't even know that it happened. Now, also over the weekend, RFK Jr. and Dr. Oz announced that there were over 1 million people who were enrolled in Obamacare who didn't even have Social Security numbers. Now, I remember when I signed up for Obamacare years ago, a Social Security number was one of the things I was told you had to have because obviously this was a program for American citizens who didn't have health care from any other source. So now that they're supporting the investigation of fraud within the medical sector and all across the federal government, they decided to take a look at Obamacare, and they determined that all of these people were signed up for insurance, but they couldn't even verify that they were real people at all. Let's go ahead and take a listen to the announcement. Oh, I need to turn this up, apparently.
Secretary, I'm joined today by my good friend and anti-fraud warrior, CMS Administrator Dr. Mehmet Oz. Healthcare fraud and corruption affect millions of Americans and maybe even you. The Obamacare marketplace is plagued by fraud, in large part because the Biden administration dismantled basic program integrity.
Yeah, Laney Lou. So that is that is a UV bug killer, basically. So that machine goes over the plants and it will, I'm sorry, maybe not bugs, but maybe weeds. So it shoots high intensity UV light at weeds that are coming up in the field. It kills them, and then they don't have to use chemicals to kill the weeds. And, obviously there is a cost to purchase one of those things. But once you get it, you no longer have to buy all of the pesticides, and it makes all the food healthier. It's pretty sweet.
Guardrails. While partisan lawfare blocked common sense efforts to protect taxpayers. Today, Dr. Oz and I are exposing one of the latest examples of fraud that we've uncovered. More than 1 million people enrolled in Obamacare without Social Security numbers on file. That is a glaring warning sign of fraud. If even a single person was on Obamacare with no Social Security number, we should have found out. Why are we paying people who we don't know if they actually exist?
Shady insurance agents and other bad actors have been getting paid to enroll unsuspecting Americans in health plans they never signed up for. These rogue agents have been flooding into healthcare.gov. That's the Obamacare marketplace. They submit applications for fake people, enroll stolen identities, all to collect millions of dollars in improper fees from insurance companies for selling plans they never legitimately sold.
Now, it's also worth mentioning that the insurance companies themselves are directly involved in this grift because, of course, all they care about is that somebody with a name and an account is buying a plan with their company. They are getting a check every single month, not only from the federal government, but if there is a real person attached to that, then they're getting more money there as well. And if nobody ever uses that plan, it's all the same because, of course, those checks just keep rolling in. You would think that there would be some level of accountability for the insurance companies themselves to verify that the people they are allegedly providing a plan for exist.
Some of these agents refuse to follow basic rules, like providing their client's Social Security number. That, my friends, is a huge red flag.
These fraudsters deliberately pick plans with no premiums. No premiums means no bill. No bill means most people never know that they've been enrolled in a plan that you and I are paying for with our taxpayer dollars. The only people who benefit are the fraudsters.
The Trump
and the insurance companies.
Administration has zero tolerance for that. So here's what we're doing about it. In May, we took swift action to block this fraudulent behavior directly on healthcare.gov and through our marketplace call center. If an agent wants to be paid, they must follow the rules. No ifs, ands, or buts. They are going to have to provide government-verified information for their clients to be enrolled.
Thanks to this aggressive enforcement strategy, we've already eliminated thousands of fraudulent policies, and we're just getting started. We're also working with insurers to cancel every policy that should never have been issued and recover every taxpayer dollar that was fraudulently paid out.
We're also scaling up our enforcement efforts to prevent these bad actors from finding new ways to manipulate the system ahead of the open enrollment system this fall, because we know the bad actors don't simply stop when you cut off one vulnerable area. The Biden administration let healthcare fraudsters run wild. Thanks to President Trump, those days are over.
To every unscrupulous insurance agent and fraudster exploiting the American people, here's our message. If you steal from the American taxpayer, or if you defraud American families, HHS will find you and we will hold you accountable.
If you're a fraudster, here's our advice to you. Do not walk away from us, run, because we are going to find you.
We're just getting started. This is the American people's health. This is the American people's money. And the Trump administration is committed to protecting both. Thank you.
The amount of fraud that they are finding across every sector of the federal government is staggering. I lost count a long time ago, and the one thing that I know is that this is not going to end anytime soon. All right. Now we're going to transition into the larger conversation related to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court session for this term is nearly over. Tomorrow is the last day. We are expecting several more cases. I believe there's 4 more cases that need to be dispensed with, which includes the birthright citizenship case. A lot of people are very worried about that. Now, The first case that we're going to talk about was President Trump's attempt to overturn his $5 million verdict, where he was ordered to pay E. Jean Carroll. Now, the Supreme Court has rejected President Trump's bid to throw that case out, which means that the Manhattan jury that reached the verdict that E. Jean Carroll's rape defamation case should be assessed damages by President Trump for $5 million at this point stands. I'm not exactly certain if there will be an additional case that we'll hear about at the lower court at the appeals level. But if you all remember back in 2019, E. Jean Carroll suddenly remembered that Donald Trump had allegedly raped her in a Bergdorf Goodman dressing room back in the 1990s. She didn't remember much, including the date or even what she was doing on that day, other than the fact that she was in a dressing room and she was allegedly wearing a dress that had not yet been created. Now, Trump, of course, has denied all allegations. He called E. Jean Carroll a whack job and said that she's not my type. But E. Jean Carroll has also spoken out on numerous occasions about her sick sexual fantasies, including a live interview with Anderson Cooper on CNN, where she said that rape was sexy and that rape was a fantasy, and she just thought everybody loved the idea of being raped. Of course, Anderson Cooper was so disturbed by what he heard that he went to a commercial break, and she said, "You're fascinating to talk to." And then he was just like, oh my God, this woman is making my skin crawl. In case you don't remember, it's probably a good thing that we have the clip.
But I think most people think of rape as it is a violent assault. It is not.
I think most people think of rape as being sexy.
Let's take a short break.
Think of the fantasies.
We're going to take a quick break. If you can stick around, we'll talk more on the other side.
You're fascinating to talk to.
She's trying to jump his bones, even though he's gay, right there on live TV. And of course, Anderson Cooper thought to himself at that moment, this woman is never going to convince anybody that Trump tried to rape her. Well, except for the jury, because she and her legal team had to come up with a strategy to make her look, in her words, effable. The jury said that E. Jean Carroll proved Trump sexually abused her when he inserted his fingers allegedly into her vagina. Now, I don't know how they could prove that. Of course, they can't. This was a New York jury, and this is just a group of people who hated Trump and wanted to see him punished. And then, of course, there was the separate defamation case in January of 2024, where Trump was ordered to pay a staggering $83.3 million. Now, last month, it was reported that the Justice Department had opened an investigation into Reid Hoffman for funding E. Jean Carroll's lawsuit, because she, of course, said under oath that nobody else was funding her lawsuits. And President Trump had responded to this decision by the Supreme Court. He said, surprisingly, the Supreme Court declined to review a fake case brought against me by a woman I never met. Decades-old celebrity photo line standing with her husband does not count. I will continue the fight against this weaponization and lawfare case against me, including the ridiculous claim of defamation, with all of my power and strength. This case is really against the United States of America and all it stands for, and should never be allowed to happen to another president or candidate to be. New York State created a law for an instant speck of time going back many decades in order to wrongfully nab me. It was tailor-made, and this injustice cannot be allowed to stand. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. So as I said, it is incredibly likely that this will not be the last that we've heard of this case with E. Jean Carroll and President Trump and these disgusting claims that were made against him. I just don't know exactly what the next move looks like, but President Trump obviously is not going to let this go. And this is probably, besides everything else that I know about Trump, the number one reason how I know this man is 100% innocent, because you take a look at somebody like Leon Black. How many claims of sexual abuse did he have against him? Well, rather than fight any of it or try to proclaim his innocence publicly, it was much, much easier to just get a bunch of NDAs and a bunch of fat multi-million-dollar checks and to pay off all of the women. How many times has that happened in Hollywood, in Washington, D.C.? Of course, it was easy when they were using our money for Congress, but they can't do that anymore. But outside of Congress, there have been dozens upon dozens of modern instances where men have made these types of arrangements and just paid off their accuser. President Trump, from day one, said that he never did this and he never would do that. Now, in probably the worst ruling that you could possibly imagine, the U.S. Supreme Court has ruled that federal law does not require mail-in ballots to be received by Election Day. Now, this is a very specific ruling, and I think that in writing this ruling, the justices of the court who deemed that federal law is not being violated have actually told the government, Congress, and President Trump exactly what needs to be done. So this was a very slim ruling, 5-4. The lawsuit challenging mail-in ballots was filed by the Republican National Committee and the Libertarian Party out of Mississippi. So conservative, so-called conservative, Justice Amy Coney Barrett wrote the majority opinion, and she said that state laws allow mail-in ballots to be counted after Election Day, and that does not conflict with federal law. In the narrowest interpretation of the law, they are correct. So Chief Justice Roberts joined Amy Coney Barrett and sided with the liberal justices. Now, if you were to think about this in a little bit more depth, I think it would be quite clear that this actually is a violation of the law. But if we're going to parse words, then the ruling makes sense in a very limited sense, because they say in the ruling, the Election Day statutes say nothing about ballot receipt, and we cannot add words that Congress did not choose or add to the words that Congress chose. Due dates for absentee ballots have shifted over time. During the Civil War, states were allowed absentee voting, imposed an Election Day deadline for the ballot receipt. And if you'll remember, earlier this year, Justice Samuel Alito blasted the endless counting of mail-in ballots during oral arguments when this case was being heard. We have lots of phrases that involve two words, the second of which is day. Labor Day, Memorial Day, George Washington's birthday, Independence Day, birthday, and Election Day. They are all particular days. So if we start with that, if I have nothing more to look at than the phrase Election Day, I think this is the day in which everything is going to take place. So Chief Justice Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett, when this case was being heard, they appeared skeptical. I think they probably had their minds made up already. But again, in the narrowest possible interpretation of what is written, they are correct. There is nothing within the law that is written to state that this mail-in ballot phenomenon has to be received by Election Day. And of course, the states have written their own rules. And so that's why you have some states that allow 2 weeks. You have some states that allow 5 days. You have all of this variation among it. So what does that mean? Well, this is something that could be remedied by Congress right now. They could write legislation which states that Election Day means Election Day, and that if all ballots to be counted are received by Election Day, then they can be counted. Otherwise, if they don't arrive by Election Day, then they are no longer considered valid. They could write that up and it would take effect and we would have no problems. But of course, Congress, as you all know, is weak and ineffectual. They simply can't get their shit together to wipe their own ass. Now, Justice Samuel Alito wrote the dissent for the court, and he, of course, did not mince words. Authoring this dissenting opinion, the lawsuit was, of course, looked at very differently by Justice Alito. It was Alito, Thomas, Gorsuch, and Kavanaugh who wrote the dissenting opinion, or who voted for the dissenting opinion. But Alito writes, federal law designates the Tuesday after the first Monday in November as Election Day. 3 U.S.C. Section 21, and provides that elections for federal office must be held on that date, noting that the electorate must, in accordance with federal Election Day statutes, make its choice on Election Day. Of course, you're not making your choice on Election Day when you have mail-in ballots that are going to be coming in for the next 2 to 4 weeks after the election is actually held. But of course, the concept of mail-in ballots didn't exist at the time that that statute was written. If ballots received after Election Day are added to the set of ballots that dictate the election's outcome, the electorate's choice does not occur on Election Day, and the federal Election Day statutes are violated, he continues. The acceptance of these late arriving ballots effectively postpones the date on which the electorate's choice is made, and federal law precludes that postponement. He further argues that the definition of election in Election Day is the expression of the electorate's choice, making it necessary that the final submission and collection of ballots must occur on one election day, not 5 days after, as permitted by Mississippi law. Back when all voting occurred in person, the voters went to the polls on Election Day. Then they completed ballots and turned them over to election officials. When the polls closed, those officials had in their possession a fixed collection of ballots, and taken together, those ballots embodied the electorate's collective choice. Today, the use of mail-in voting cannot change the fact that under federal law, the electorate's collective choice must still be authoritatively expressed on Election Day. So the court disagrees and concludes that the Election Day statutes merely require that each individual cast a vote on or before Election Day. See ante at 9. But if that is all that the Election Day statutes require, there is no sense in which the electorate as a whole can be seen as making its choice on Election Day. Rather, the electorate's choice would be made piecemeal over an extended period prior to Election Day, and that prospect is blatantly contrary to what the Election Day statutes demand. Election Day is a specified date, not a span of multiple days. The Election Day statutes require that federal elections occur on that date. Now, Alito further notes that under Mississippi's law, allowing ballot collections to continue for 5 days after Election Day, the election is not held until the end of that period, which is in violation of federal law. And that is truthfully how I believe this should be interpreted. Even if the specific statutes don't mention the mailing of ballots or the actual collecting of ballots that are coming in after Election Day, those things did not exist at the time this concept was created. Election Day should be 1 day. And in order to make sure that it is now going to require an act of Congress. Now, Coney Barrett wrote in the opinion, the Election Day statutes say nothing about ballot receipt, and we cannot add to the words that Congress chose. Due dates for absentee ballots have shifted over time, and because of that, we have had all of these various interpretations of it. Now, Alito debunks Coney Barrett's claims, writing, even when the Civil War took soldiers hundreds of miles from their usual polling places, Election Day still meant ballot collection day. And regardless of the method a state used, each state continued to mandate that poll workers, whether on the field or back home, received soldiers' ballots by Election Day. This includes votes that were mailed, distributed, and collected by election commissioners and polling places that were administered by military officers on the battlefield as ways of ensuring federal law was complied with. Now, of course, back then, people weren't looking for ways to get around the concept of Election Day. We didn't have the mass fraud that we have today. And because of these people very ingeniously trying to get around the choice of words that were used in order to be able to cheat, they have made it necessary for it to be spelled out like every person is retarded, as if people can't read themselves and they need it spoon-fed to them. Election Day is Election Day, not election week, not election month. But until we have that written as part of the federal statute outlawing mail-in ballots and effectively creating no room for interpretation, unfortunately, with this weak decision by the Supreme Court, we are where we are. During the World Wars, Alito continued, Congress in at least 9 states allowed absentee ballots to arrive after Election Day in certain circumstances. And he describes the wartime practice of a handful of states as short-lived outlier rules, which shed little light on the original meaning of election in the Election Day statutes, as only 2 states allowed ballots to arrive after Election Day by 1977. Although post-Election Day deadlines have become more widespread in the last 5 decades, These developments post-date the last Election Day statute by over 50 years and the first statute by over a century. These late-in-time practices therefore count for little when discerning the timing restrictions that Congress imposed when it enacted those statutes, he added, highlighting the legislative intent behind the Election Day statutes. And he further slammed the majority opinion by writing, not only is today's decision inconsistent with statutory text, legal context, historical practice, and precedent, it also threatens to produce lamentable consequences. The majority's holding spawns a slurry of troubling Election Day questions and risks further undermining Americans' confidence in election integrity. And that is exactly what it will do if further actions are not taken. Today's decision, he continues, is inconsistent with the terms of the Election Day statutes, contemporary election law principles, 2 centuries of historical practice, and the case law on the question presented. It opens up and fails to resolve a host of questions for state election officials and courts, and it creates a serious risk of further undermining public confidence in our elections and our system of self-government. He could not be more correct. Oh, well, thank you very much, Durdurius. I appreciate you. Let me say thank you to Pquest for a cookie. Thank you to Jay for a cookie. Thank you to Sean Joe for 3 more cookies. Thank you to Super D, who says, thanks for the judge rulings. Have not seen them. Awesome. I'm glad you're here, homie. And then Sean Joe, thank you for the cookie as well. Also, Illinois Danny, thank you for joining as a monthly supporter over there on Rumble. I appreciate it. Principled Enigma says regenerative farming also involves seeds that make plants that can reproduce, rather than genetically neutering the second-generation seeds, forcing farmers to make unnecessary yearly purchases. Yes, there are a whole bunch of things. You know, it's interesting that they call modern farming practices traditional farming because it's not really traditional. Regenerative farming is the actual traditional method of farming. Farmers being able to save and harvest and then plant their own seeds, that's the way that it should be. But of course, the big agriculture industry has created a system which makes farmers slaves of big ag, so that they have to buy their fertilizer, they have to buy their herbicides, they have to buy their seeds every year. And of course, now that they're genetically modified, we don't even know what the hell it is that we're eating. All right, so continuing, President Trump, of course, has commented on this as well. And as you might expect, he directly calls out the Supreme Court. He calls this a bad decision. And he once again makes the case that this means that we need the Save America Act even more than ever. Now, I have talked about the Save America Act on so many different occasions, okay? It's not perfect to ensure that our election system is saved, but it certainly is exposing all of the traitors in Congress even more than they were exposed previously. And he is absolutely correct when he says that Congress needs to take legislative action to ensure that this weak decision by the Supreme Court doesn't continue to threaten and undermine the security of our elections even more. As of right now, they're still fake and gay.
You have any questions?
Mr. President, what do you make of the Supreme Court ruling today in regards to the mail-in ballots, and what comes next for the SAVE Act after today's ruling?
Well, because of the mail-in ballot ruling, which was a little bit surprising, gives people more time to vote illegally, let's say. But the SAVE Act is even more important, and that's the right. You have to be a citizen of our country. Okay, you have to show you're a citizen of our country, called citizenship. Voter ID by photo voter ID, and no mail-in ballots unless you're in the military, disabled, you're ill, or you're away, or even on a vacation. We're being very open about it. It's pretty easy. And we'll have honest elections. But the ruling, which a lot of people were waiting for, that was a ruling that was, I think it was very detrimental to honest elections. But it is what it is. Basically, they're keeping it a little bit the way it is now. They may have a little bit of a restriction on based on the wording.
About firing the parliamentarian.
And then you have the very important one, the Slaughter case, which we'll talk about if you ask that question. But
and we are going to be talking about Slaughter next.
The parliamentarian What were you asking about?
Yeah, have you talked with Thune about?
I have. No, I can't imagine why you'd keep a woman that was put there by Harry Reid and Barack Hussein Obama. I cannot understand it. The leader has the right to fire the person at will and put somebody else there.
All right. So President Trump continued discussing the parliamentarian, and we've talked about his position on this before. President Trump, as do I believe, that the parliamentarian needs to be fired. This woman has been in this position since the Obama administration. It was Harry Reid who placed her in that position. She's the one who determines whether or not a piece of legislation is going to break the rules of the arbitrarily determined rule book that they have created in the House, or if it's going to pass muster. And she will frequently kick things back and tell Congress that they need to change it or they need to remove things. But the speaker, who is, of course, John Thune, has the power to replace this woman. There is nothing in the rule book that says that she must be kept in that position until the day that she shuffles off this mortal coil. But of course, John Thune is not doing anything about it because he's not truly a believer in making America great again. He is somebody who is in the Senate for his own personal, narcissistic, power-hungry reasons.
The parliamentarian. What were you asking about?
Yeah, have you talked with Thune about?
I have. No, I can't imagine why you'd keep a woman that was put there by Harry Reid and Barack Hussein Obama. I cannot understand it. The leader has the right to fire the person at will and put somebody else there. That would be, because we get so many negative rulings from her, the parliamentarian. She's been there for years, and she was put there by Harry Reid and Barack Hussein Obama. Harry Reid was a bad guy, and he was the leader, and he put her. And the speaker has the right to immediately fire her and put somebody else there. And it's not even believable that she's still there. She's obviously a good politician. Or
she certainly has something on someone. You think about how many corrupt people have come through the Senate, how much dirt that woman probably has on people. So I think that tells you everything you need to know about why she's still there. Now, I also did want to address something that I said last week that somebody was very disturbed about. I had mentioned casually that I didn't care for Randy Fine, who is my congressman. I will go on record and say that Randy Fine has been a reliable yes vote in the House of Representatives. Randy Fine, he does all the America First, Make America Great Again stuff. But my personal opinion on Randy Fine is based on him as a person, not only his voting record. So when I said that I didn't care for Randy Fine, I only meant that I didn't like him personally based upon some of the things that he said and some of the behavior that he's engaged in. Make no mistake, if Randy Fine is the choice, I'll vote for Randy Fine because really I have no other choice. I'm not going to vote for a Democrat. And I also want to be very clear. I don't expect everybody who listens to the show to agree with literally everything that I say. And if you support Randy Fine, I'm not going to shame you for it. I will most likely be voting for somebody else in the primary. And that's simply because I haven't cared for some of the behavior that Randy has engaged in. If he does get reelected, I will expect him to continue being a reliable yes vote for President Trump. And that's really the only thing that I expect from him. But I just would like for people who are representing me to have a higher level of moral character. And that's really where my opinion of him was based. Now, in regards to the Save America Act, of course, they are now talking about trying to pass it through reconciliation, which is the reason President Trump is saying that the Senate parliamentarian needs to be removed because she's the one who has already blocked it. Now, in order for it to pass the Byrd rule, and in order for something to pass the reconciliation, which would allow for a simple majority rather than the 60 votes that they have arbitrarily selected for things to pass through the Senate, it has to be something related to the budget. Now, she's already said that this is not going to work. And I personally think that it's a dead end because we've already tried. It hasn't been able to go through. But Anna Paulina Luna has previously talked about making an amendment to the NDAA and adding a provision for voter ID and proof of citizenship, which is an aspect of the Save America Act. Now, the reason she would do this is because the National Defense Authorization Act, which governs the funding for everything that keeps America safe and secure, if people voted against it, then they would obviously not just be voting against voter ID and proof of citizenship, they would be voting against funding the Pentagon and all of these other various aspects which are necessary to keep the United States humming along. So that's why she wants to attach it to that. So this is Amendment 1388, and she reiterates it is not possible to add the Save America Act to reconciliation. It would fail miserably with the Byrd Rule. And I believe she is correct because they've already attempted it. House leadership, which is Mike Johnson, has direct decision-making authority over whether or not this will be added to the NDAA. The idea that this can't be done is false. And if there is going to be a request for my vote on the rule, they need to allow this to come to the floor. Now, everybody's about to go on another freaking vacation. So I don't know that this is going to happen. But I think that this is a way that we could get the key provisions of the Save America Act passed and made law. So what is the Humphreys executor case? President Trump made mention of this earlier. This is a case which had previously basically stopped President Trump, who is the chief executive, from firing people within certain positions of the executive branch. Now, the reason that this case came before the Supreme Court is because President Trump had attempted to fire the FTC commissioner who was appointed by Joe Biden. Why wouldn't you, as the president from a different political party or from just somebody who is now taking over the government? Why wouldn't you want to put people in there who are, of course, going to support your agenda? You would. But the effort to stop President Trump from doing that was, of course, an effort to keep the deep state in power within the federal government. And again, it's so broad. These people are embedded in all these positions. They have had all of this protection. President Trump has now got the ability to just fire people from the federal government, fire people from these appointed positions. And this was a stronger decision than the mail-in ballot decision. This was 6-3, and it now opens the door for President Trump to fire the Biden-appointed Federal Trade Commissioner, Rebecca Slaughter, and any other political appointees who are from these executive branch agencies. This was a big win for President Trump, and it opens the door for a major clearing of waste out of the federal government. So last March, President Trump, think about this. It's been over a year that this has been going on. President Trump fired both Democratic commissioners that were on the FTC, and they sued. They wanted to keep their jobs. They were doing everything they could to make it difficult for Trump. But the Supreme Court had previously allowed Trump to fire Slaughter, and this new decision overturns Humphrey's executor versus the United States, which is what is now going to give President Trump the lawful authority to fire agency heads across the entirety of the executive branch. Justice Clarence Thomas, a national treasure, had previously blasted this decision from 1935, the Humphreys executor decision. Humphreys executor, he wrote, poses a direct threat to our constitutional structure, and as a result, the liberty of the American people. Our tolerance of independent agencies in Humphreys executor is an unfortunate example of the court's failure to apply the Constitution as written. That decision has paved the way for an ever-expanding encroachment on the power of the executive, contrary to our constitutional design. If anything more is left of Humphreys, we overrule it, Chief Justice John Roberts wrote in this majority decision that was released today. Humphreys has for decades been a result in search of a rationale. So, President Trump, as the chief executive, he's the only person with the power to hire and fire people at that level within the executive branch. The president was effectively hamstrung by this decision, but the ruling now gives President Trump the right to fire whomever he wants in these appointed positions. And oftentimes, many of them are Democrats appointed by previous administrations. So this is now a big, big decision, and it's going to pave the way for his quest to get rid of all these people who are blocking his agenda from within the federal government. And again, this was over a year ago that this happened, and now here we are a year and a half into President Trump's second term, and he's only just now being given the authority to do something he should have been able to do since the very beginning. So this 1935 decision, Humphrey's executor laid the groundwork for certain agencies across the executive branch to enjoy a degree of independence from the White House, even though within the executive branch of the government, President Trump and any president should have had power over them. So these agencies regulate vast swaths of American life, which includes labor disputes, federal employee rights, workplace discrimination, credit unions, product recalls, plane accidents, and more. Beyond the FTC, the decision stands to impact roughly 24 multi-member agencies across the government, allowing President Trump to install appointees who will fit his political mold. President Trump did respond to this ruling, and he called it one of the most important ever. It is such an honor to be the sitting president who won this historic and unprecedented ruling, one of the most important ever given with respect to presidential powers. In full, he wrote, "Big win just moments ago at the SCOTUS in the slaughter case, confirming presidential power in our country to remove executive branch officers and agency appointees or representatives under Article 2. This decision was long sought by U.S. presidents dating all the way back to the 1930s. It is such an honor to be the one who got there. And thank you for your attention to this matter." And then also in a follow-up post, he wrote, "To show the importance of the slaughter case, 90 years of precedence has been completely and unequivocally overruled, greatly increasing presidential power at a time when it is most needed." Thank you to Sean Joe for the cookie. Thank you to Sulfanol for the shades. The Senate is in recess because they need 19 days to figure out how to F us going forward. We are watching. That's right. They continually do this. They take everything up until the last minute. Oh, we just can't get there. We don't have the votes. We don't have the support. Let's go on vacation. And they leave us hanging in the lurch, just like everybody else. Darla says, "We need to do what South Africans are doing. They've told illegals to get the F out by the end of the month or they'll burn them out. Only we need to tell Congress to get them out." Yeah, you are absolutely correct. Also, thank you so much to G. Fontes, who says, "Fake and gay election month or season may or may not be completed by Thanksgiving, U.S. or Canadian Thanksgiving, but almost certainly by Valentine's Day of the following calendar year." Personally, I think that it needs to happen much, much sooner than that so that we can have it take effect for the midterms. Emerald Coast 14 says, "Love the content. Love your show. Fellow Floridian here." Thank you so much. I appreciate you, and I'm glad that you're having a good time. Principled Enigma says, "Some may disagree, but I believe there are two courts above the Supreme Court. The World Court, better known as the World Joke, and Yahuwah's Court, in which we are all judged, like it or not. Every morning we wake up as a gift from God, giving us another chance to get it right. The best competition is against our own previous performance, not each other." Oh, I absolutely agree with you. August is the deadline, Little Peach, he says. Also, Principled Enigma says, "Pride will ruin the patriot movement if they can't learn to compromise. Every major decision should be based upon scriptural principles and not doctrinal principles." All right. Now, also from the Supreme Court, this is almost in opposition of the Humphreys executor slaughter decision. However, it also reinforces the fact that the Federal Reserve is not federal and is not even a part of the United States government. So the Supreme Court today said President Trump can fire Rebecca Slaughter and many others within these appointed positions in the executive branch, but he cannot fire Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook. Now, this was another 5-4 decision ruling that President Trump cannot remove Cook, and Chief Justice John Roberts wrote the majority opinion on this one. To accept any of those arguments would, in effect, transform the Federal Reserve's for-cause protection into at-will employment. Well, of course, since the Federal Reserve is an independent bank owned by not the United States of America, it is, of course, not even really governed by the United States government. Now, Justice Thomas dissented. Lisa Cook, of course, filed that lawsuit against President Trump and the Federal Reserve Board of Governors and Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell after he fired her last summer. The administration had asked the Supreme Court to intervene after a federal appeals court also blocked President Trump from firing Lisa Cook. The DOJ Solicitor General, John Sauer, who I think does great work, in his petition to SCOTUS, said the lower courts have interfered with the president's authority to remove members of the Federal Reserve Board of Governors for cause. A federal appeals court also rejected President Trump's bid to fire her. So the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, in a 2-1 decision, said Lisa Cook can remain on the Federal Reserve Board as a governor, allowing her to vote during last month's interest rate meeting at the Fed. And the reason that President Trump, of course, wanted to get rid of Lisa Cook is because she owns 3 properties and she allegedly committed mortgage fraud on all 3 of those properties. Now, she's never responded to those allegations. And of course, although a criminal referral was filed against her, nothing has come of that yet. If you'll remember, according to housing regulator Bill Pulte's first criminal referral, Lisa Cook committed mortgage fraud by lying on her mortgage application and falsifying bank statements when she designated her out-of-state Atlanta condo as her primary residence. She wasn't living there. She was renting it out. She did this just 2 weeks after taking a loan on her Michigan home, which she also claimed as her primary residence. Now, last August, Pulte sent a second criminal referral for Lisa Cook after she was allegedly caught lying on a third property. Lisa Cook's attorneys laughably claimed there would be an inflation crisis if Trump were allowed to fire Cook. And President Trump responded to the decision by today's Supreme Court ruling to reject this effort to fire her by saying the Cook lawsuit, having to do with her suitability in sitting on the Board of Federal Reserve, was sent back to the Supreme Court on a strictly procedural basis. We will take appropriate action immediately to make sure that someone who has committed wrongdoing will not be making vital decisions concerning the welfare of the United States of America. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Now, that tells us everything we need to know. I think that President Trump, the DOJ, and everyone investigating this was waiting for the decision from the Supreme Court, because this is going to extend beyond Lisa Cook at the end of the day. Although the Federal Reserve is not federal, the decision by the SCOTUS to allow the firing of anyone for cause on the Board of Governors would have been a tremendously powerful tool for both President Trump and future presidents to have some level of authority over the Federal Reserve. There is obviously a larger conversation that needs to be had about the Federal Reserve and its continued existence. But now that Lisa Cook has been found to be unfireable, that means that the next phase can continue. Clearly, the administration has been evaluating ways to deal with Lisa Cook and to indict her for committing mortgage fraud. That would be the next logical step. I think Lisa Cook will not be on the Federal Reserve Board of Governors for very long at all. I think that she ultimately will be removed. But now I think she's going to be removed through the indictment and prosecution of felony mortgage fraud. So we'll keep an eye on this. Ultimately, President Trump is going to win, but Lisa Cook is not going to win. All right. Now, thank you for everybody for hanging out with us. If you wouldn't mind, please do me a favor and hit the like button. That would really, really be awesome. We have yet another decision by the Supreme Court. And let me tell you, this one is also a very, very good decision. This has to do with your rights to privacy and unlawful search and seizure. So the Supreme Court has ruled today that police conduct a Fourth Amendment search of your person and information when they grab your Google location history data through geofencing warrants. So this decision holds that law enforcement officers are actually conducting a Fourth Amendment search upon you and your person when they obtain your cell phone location data from Google and when they do these geofence warrants. This was a 6-3 decision. Again, a much larger and stronger decision. This case was Shatry versus the United States. And the court ruled that you, as an American, have a reasonable expectation of privacy in your cell phone location information. And that is even when that data is stored by a third-party technology company like Google or Apple Maps or any of the other apps on your phone that have access to your location data. The ruling represents the court's most significant digital privacy decision since their decision in 2018 in Carpenter involving historical cell site location data. Now, Justice Elena Kagan authored the majority opinion, and she joined Chief Justice John Roberts, Justice Sonia Sotomayor, Brett Kavanaugh, Ketanji Brown Jackson, and Jackson separately concurring. Neil Gorsuch concurred only in the judgment, while Justice Samuel Alito dissented, and he joined in part by Justice Clarence Thomas and Amy Coney Barrett. Justice Barrett also filed a separate dissent. So this case builds directly on the Carpenter decision, which had already required warrants for cell site location information. The court made clear that Google's even more precise and sweeping location history data, which of course logs your location every 2 minutes within about 20 meters, and can even reveal elevation and which floor of a building you're on, deserves at least some protection. So in the Chaudhry versus United States case, it arose from a May 20th, 2019 armed robbery of a credit union in Midlothian, Virginia. Police had surveillance footage and witness statements, but they had no suspect. And on June 14th, they obtained a Virginia magistrate's geofence warrant that was directed at Google. So the warrant targeted a 150-meter radius around the credit union, and it used Google's infamous three-step process. Step 1, Google hands over anonymized location data for all devices inside the geofence for 30 minutes before to 30 minutes after the robbery. Step 2, officers narrow down the list, and then Google provides more anonymized data both inside and outside that geofence for a longer 2-hour window. And then step 3, officers narrow it down again. And then at that point, Google turns over names, phone numbers, and identifying information for that final shorter list. Now, Google ultimately produced 3 users identifying information. One was petitioner Okello Chaudhry, whose data showed him entering the geofence area about 10 minutes before the robbery and then heading towards a residential area right after. Chaudhry was later charged federally with robbery with firearms offenses, and he moved to suppress the data from Google, arguing the geofence warrant violated the Fourth Amendment. So the district court agreed that the warrant plainly violates the Fourth Amendment, but they denied the suppression of it under the good faith exception. And a divided Fourth Circuit panel and then the en banc court both affirmed on different grounds, with judges splitting evenly on whether a search even occurred. Of course, a search occurred because they are getting your personal data. So the Supreme Court granted certiorari only on the search question, and they left the warrant's validity, particularity, and probable cause at each step for the Fourth Circuit Court to decide on remand. So the court systematically rejected the government's arguments. Location history is more revealing than the cell site location at issue in Carpenter. It's finer grained, it's more frequent, and as I said, it can show elevation. It also creates an encyclopedic and detailed portrait of a person's movements and associations, familial associations, political associations, professional, religious, sexual. Even short-term monitoring, in this case a 2-hour window, can reveal a wealth of detail about a person's life, the court noted, citing Sotomayor's concurrence. The government cannot claim a free pass for limited duration data when they can cherry pick exactly which hours they want Google's all-encompassing database to hand over the information. And the third-party doctrine does not save the government. As in Carpenter, this information is not truly shared in a normal sense. Google users turn on location history for their own benefit, timeline, recommendations, personal journal, often after repeated prompts warning that devices will not work correctly otherwise. They don't expect Google to hand it over to police on demand. A lot of the things on your phone simply won't operate properly if you're not allowing the phone to view your location history. So although this guy, in my opinion, definitely robbed the credit union, I think the Supreme Court made the correct decision. If the police want to look at your location data history, then I believe they should have a warrant for it. Otherwise, it is an unlawful seizure of yourself, your person, and your information. All right. Now, jumping into the case for taking out the communists. There were some big things that happened in the last week. Several DSA candidates, particularly in the state of New York, won their primaries against established Democrat candidates, people who otherwise, under any other circumstance, would have won their elections. And President Trump commented on this on the 25th. He said, the communists are finally making their move. I've been waiting and preparing for this for a long time. It's easy to be a communist. All you have to do is say, I'll give you everything. But that means you're taking it away from others that have earned it. Over thousands of years, that ideology has not worked once. The game is on. Enjoy watching President Donald J. Trump. Trump is fully putting the communists on notice, and he's obviously telling us that he's been waiting for this moment for a very long time. And that is wonderful, because this certainly is a very dangerous time in American history. Now, before we continue, I have one final message from our friends over here on Rumble. I'm sure that everybody here hears a lot about crypto. Crypto is everywhere, but this is a very important part that a lot of people miss. Crypto was created so that you could actually own and control your own money. If you'll go back to the 2008 financial crisis, Bitcoin was designed as an alternative to banks. So instead of a bank holding onto your money, delaying transfers, limiting access, telling you you can't take that out, you're the one who's in control of your money. And if you've ever had to wait for a transfer to clear, you have felt that particular problem. So fast forward to today, everybody's heard about crypto, but getting started can sometimes feel a little bit complicated. This is why I love Rumble Wallet. This is why I love using Rumble Wallet. It takes all the complexity out of it. It makes it very simple. You choose what you want to work with: Bitcoin, dollar-backed stablecoins, even gold, the digital gold that is backed by real gold. It's not complicated to set up. It connects directly to MoonPay. You use your credit card, your debit card, or your bank account, and you're up and running in just a couple of minutes. And then once you get set up, you can even support your favorite creators on Rumble, whether it be me or somebody else. So do this now. If you haven't yet, use that QR code on screen, scan it, and get your Rumble Wallet set up, or just click the link in the description and download the Rumble Wallet. And from there, you get it set up, you tap buy, and you're in the game. Very simple. In just a few minutes, you go from hearing about crypto to actually owning some. Thank you once again to Rumble and Rumble Wallet. Appreciate it. All right. Now, getting back to the situation with the commies. I want to remind you guys about this photograph here. President Trump, after posting his warning to the communists, 2 days later, he posts this photograph that you likely have seen before of himself at the age of 20 and Barack Hussein Obama at the age of 18. Now, this picture, a version of this picture, was in the posts by our favorite Anon back in 2020, if I'm not mistaken. However, it wasn't the exact same version. It was slightly different. I wanted to find where this picture originated. So I wanted to see that the earliest version of this picture that I could find on the internet. And the earliest that I could find was this version of it from 2017. Now, what you'll notice here is that the boxes are slightly different. They have rounded edges. And actually, let me reopen the last close tab so that we can compare them. So in this version posted by President Trump, the boxes containing their names have squared off edges, and it includes the first initial, and for Barack Obama, the first and middle initial. So D. Trump at the age of 20 and Barack Hussein Obama at the age of 18. In this earliest incarnation of that photograph, the photograph itself has rounded edges on the box. Let me open this image in a new tab right here. The boxes are rounded, and it only has their last names. It doesn't have their first initials. Now, in the version that was posted by our favorite Anon, it includes the squared off edges in the border around the names, but it only has B. Obama. So President Trump added the H for Hussein, and this version on the board is the version that President Trump edited and then added the Hussein to it. So it's not like President Trump went and got the version from 2017. He went and got the version that was posted by the Q team back in 2020 when this post came out. Now, the war is real. He fights for you. That was the messaging from this post. It was May 11th of 2020. And if you'll recall, back when President Trump talked about communists the other day, he said that he has been preparing for this for a long time. The war against the deep state is the same as the war against the communists. Now, right now, communism is infecting the state of New York. One thing that we had was the election of communist mayor Zoran Mamdani. And recently, Zoran Mamdani has essentially announced a plan which will effectively destroy landlords all across the city, allowing the city of New York to take possession of these buildings. Effectively, he has implemented a rent freeze, which will force landlords to rent to people in New York at a level that is below market value. It also may be below the amount of money that they're bringing in, and it may be less than the amount of money that they even have to pay to maintain the buildings. So here is a video from a New York City mayor, a New York City landlord calling out Mamdani. The New York City panel voted last week to freeze the rents for nearly 1 million rent-stabilized apartments. Now, there are plenty of apartments in New York City that are going for market value, and rent is very expensive in New York because there is an issue with supply. But there is a lot of apartments that could be rented out, but they're not rented out because they're rent stabilized, and the amount of money that they bring in because of that rent stabilization is not enough for the landlords to even maintain the buildings. So you've got probably 40% of all apartments across the 5 boroughs that have now become part of this rent stabilization freeze. And the reveal on this is that this includes not just the typical trash apartments that people are forced to live in as part of the rent stabilization. This is now also applying to high-rise luxury apartments. And Mamdani posted this video bragging about the board rendering their decision, and he says that more than 2 million residents of New York City are going to be affected.
New York, the Independent Rent Guidelines Board just froze the rent. That means if you're one of the more than 2 million New Yorkers who lives in a rent-stabilized apartment, your rent's going to be frozen next year.
Now, of course, that sounds great, right? You're not going to have to pay more for rent. But this is a creeping level of communism that is coming in. Now, this Jude Jean-Paul Bernard, who is a landlord and a real estate broker and an investor, posted this video talking about his displeasure with this announcement from the board and Mamdani. And it looks like I have to open it up in a new window. Oh.
Renters out there, you guys did it. You guys got the rent frozen, and for the next 2 years, there will be no increases. Perfect. Now, that doesn't mean that the expenses have gone down. That doesn't mean that taxes, insurance, water, energy, labor, none of that went down. So I'm not sure if we were struggling to make the numbers before. I'm not sure how we're going to fix that boiler, how we're going to provide you hot water, fix that broken elevator, and do all those things that you tenants deserve, which is your right. But if there's no money, how are we going to do this? And conveniently, the same city that just passed this rent freeze has also said that they will be taking distressed properties from bad landlords. So we don't have the money to fix the properties, but if we don't fix the properties, you guys are going to take it away. I love it. Socialism at its best. Love it.
So that's the plan. Make it cost prohibitive for landlords to be able to keep up these apartments to make them suitable for people to live in, seize the properties from the landlords, operate them as publicly owned entities. Now, that doesn't mean that the city of New York is going to be able to run these buildings or these apartments any better. There are plenty of city-owned properties around New York that are squalors, that are crawling with cockroaches and bed bugs, and they're crumbling and falling apart. I'm sure you remember last year when that boiler blew up and tore that section off of the building. But this is what they do in communism. The government owns everything, and then everybody has access to every shitty piece of shit that everybody else does. Now, this is quite literally the moment where the Democratic Socialists of America, the communists, take over the Democrat Party. And that's because the Democrats have placated to these socialists for many, many years. They wanted them to vote for them because they wanted to stay in power. Well, they did it for so long that the socialists gained the same political power that was previously in the hands of reliable Democrats that were in office. So now the socialists, supported by Mamdani and supported by the ultra radical left across America, have now usurped the power from these shitty Democrats. And John Fetterman is calling it out because he is seemingly the only person with any sense in the modern day Democratic Party. And he said, I said months ago, the Democratic Party is becoming an orgy of socialism. These recent elections vindicate my prescription. Among the biggest upset was 32-year-old doctoral student Darializa Avila Chevalier, who defeated longtime incumbent Rep. Adriano Espaillat in the Democrat primary. Chevalier described America as an effing disgrace. She posted F. Kamala Harris, and she posted that she forgot napkins, so she wiped her hands on the American flag. She wants to abolish the border, abolish prisons. That is a deeply disturbed individual, Fetterman said. He also mocked Maine's Democratic Senate candidate Graham Plattner and Chevalier as the dirtbag left's new power couple. Of course, Graham Plattner is the guy who had a Atomwaffen tattoo on his chest. They called Donald Trump a Nazi for over a decade, and here we go. Graham Plattner actually has a Nazi tattoo. Also, State Assemblywoman Claire Valdez won the Democrat primary to replace retiring Representative Nydia Velázquez in New York's 7th Congressional District. Brad Lander, he is a ultra-leftist New York City councilman who we have seen videos of inside the courthouse in the ICE building, getting arrested for fighting with ICE officials. He upset Representative Dan Goldman. Dan Goldman was the guy that got kicked out of a coffee shop last week right before his primary, and he was the lawyer representing the Democrats in one of Donald Trump's impeachments. Dan Goldman was not supposed to lose. He's a billionaire. He's got all the money that you could ever spend on a political campaign, and he was upset by a local communist. And of course, the Democrat Party is falling apart as a result. Now, also in Washington, D.C., the incoming mayor, as we talked about last week, Janice Lewis George, she is also a socialist. And President Trump has said that if she is elected, and appears she's going to, he might likely invoke the home rule and take power over D.C. again. I think that needs to happen. But he's now said that I will meet with Janice Lewis George, but must forewarn everyone that Washington, D.C. is again a safe and prestigious community. And he further said he will not let that his progress in making D.C. safe and beautiful be destroyed by a communist adherent who has no intention to make Washington great again. In full, he said Janice Lewis George, the communist who is almost certainly going to be elected mayor of D.C., has stated she wants to empty the prisons, make D.C. a sanctuary city, oppose ICE, welcome criminal illegal aliens back into our beloved capital, resist anti-crime crackdowns, defund the police, and continue and expand cashless bail, and so many other capital-destroying things. This is what all of these leftist communist radicals want to do once they get into power. In the end, it will never work out, nor will I let it even have a chance, because I have worked too hard to make D.C. the envy of the world with almost no crime and a beautification process that has been second to none. I will meet Lewis George, but I must forewarn everyone that D.C. is safe again and a prestigious community. Many people, including myself, have worked long and hard to get it here, and we will not let it be destroyed by a communist adherent who has no intention to make Washington great again. Now, asked how he would feel if she won her race, he said, I wouldn't like it. Maybe we'll take back Washington and run it on a federal basis. We won't put up with it. We're not going to lose our businesses. I believe that that is exactly what he'll have to do. Now, Janice George has responded to President Trump's comments, and she said, it is a great honor to be the Democratic nominee for mayor of my hometown. While most of these claims are incorrect, what President Trump said, the fact is that the mayor of our nation's capital and the Trump administration are going to be meeting with each other. I'm willing to work with anyone, including this administration, to improve the lives of D.C. residents. Well, we'll see exactly what happens. But the one thing that I can tell you is that today it was announced that the DOJ has now launched a grand jury investigation into an actual communist, and that would be Neville Roy Singham. This is the dark money power network that has been funding all of these paid protests and Marxist chaos across the United States for the last several years. And when President Trump said that he was waiting for the socialists and the communists to make their move, I think that he meant that he was finally going to be making his move against people like Singham. Now, if you don't know, Neville Roy Singham has been under the careful watch of a number of congressional committees for quite some time. The DOJ has also been looking into him, but this is the first time we've had a federal grand jury investigation into Singham in any jurisdiction. This is out of Manhattan. Now, Singham may be a citizen of the United States, but he now lives in communist China, and he is an avowed Marxist. He's been using his fortune to bankroll this vast dark money network of pro-communist and anti-American activities across the country for several years. So this grand jury is in the Southern District of New York, and they've already begun issuing subpoenas. They're looking at his bank records and financial documents. They want to see where that money is flowing. The investigation was authorized by acting U.S. Attorney General Todd Blanche, and it's being led by current U.S. Attorney Jay Clayton, who, of course, is now the nominee for the Director of National Intelligence. They are examining potential acts of wire fraud, bank fraud, money laundering, and a number of other financial crimes that have been tied to the movement of roughly $278 to $285 million through Singham's elaborate dark money web since 2017. We've talked about a number of these organizations that have been the recipients of these money, and they have also paid out other monies. And they do not all have their paperwork in place. So the grand jury action follows an investigation that was published in mid-March documenting how Singham pumped this $285 million from his home base in Shanghai into a Goldman Sachs philanthropy fund and two shell corporations that then fed the money into a constellation of NGOs, nonprofit organizations, media operations, and activist groups pushing for sectarian division, identity politics, and support for socialist politicians. Now, the investigation is examining the movement of that money through his financial network and attempting to determine if Singham, the organizations he funded, or the leaders or their leaders committed wire fraud, bank fraud, money laundering, or other financial crimes, according to sources familiar with the matter. Keeping in mind the order of operations here, President Trump has already declared that Antifa and all of their splinter organizations are both domestic and foreign terrorist organizations. Neville Roy Singham's funding of these organizations is going to be very, very relevant. Prosecutors have presented evidence to the grand jury, which has issued subpoenas seeking these bank records and financial documents from all of the organizations in Singham's network. Federal prosecutors, of course, use grand jury subpoenas as an investigative tool to compel the production of documents and testimony as they determine whether sufficient evidence exists to pursue criminal charges. It does, and they will. Now, the investigation marks a major escalation after years of mounting concerns from Republicans in Congress who have all been looking at Singham's financial support for organizations that promote socialist, communist, and anti-American causes, while allegedly maintaining close ties to the Chinese Communist Party. Singham is the founder of ThoughtWorks. They were reportedly amassed a fortune after selling their software company for approximately $785 million before he relocated to Shanghai. Since then, he's become the subject of numerous investigations and congressional inquiries over allegations he financed a sprawling network of activist groups and media organizations advancing pro-Beijing narratives. Don't forget, he's also married to Medea Benjamin, the woman who founded Code Pink. Now, it's previously been reported that Singham has operated as a major funding vehicle for a host of radical leftist causes. In May, far-left Twitch streamer Hassan Piker allegedly admitted on air that it was Singham that has been bankrolling a lot of political movements across the country, a lot of activism, and of course, he's doing it illegally. Piker was speaking after the Treasury and the DOJ hit him and others in his network for their trip to Cuba that delivered aid to the communist regime. Piker himself is under investigation by the Department of Treasury and the IRS. Earlier in September of last year, House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer and Representative Anna Paulina Luna called on Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent to immediately freeze all of Singham's assets. As he is an American, they can do that. And they warned that this billionaire was using American nonprofits to fund anti-American political movements on behalf of foreign interests. Congressional Republicans, including Ways and Means Chairman Jason Smith, Senator Tom Cotton, and others, have already raised alarms about Singham's $278+ million dark money empire spreading CCP-aligned propaganda through U.S. tax-exempt organizations. We've had House committees investigating. We've had letters get sent out. And, of course, under the previous administration, very little was done. But now the communists have made their move, and President Trump is making his move. Now, George Soros is probably the next person that I would look for to see a subpoena coming out against. And George Soros continues to pump hundreds of millions of dollars into current midterm elections around the country. George Soros and Alex Soros have funneled a staggering $103 million into the midterms, and they're on track to shatter any previous spending records. Now, this makes him the largest individual donor to date, and he is the chief architect of the Democrat Party's seismic shift into communist territory. With the elections just about 4 months away, Soros would likely shatter his own record of $128 million that was set during the midterms 4 years ago. The amount of money that George Soros has put into these races is, of course, necessary because the Democrats at a national level have got a negative balance in their bank account. So, as you can see, George Soros plays a very major role, and he has also had a lot to do with the spread of communism throughout the United States. A couple of quick things showing how this is backfiring on Democrat politicians. Over the weekend were a number of pride festivals and parades, and in Rhode Island, some of these Antifa types were riding around a gay pride float where they had a rainbow guillotine and they had a effigy of the city's gay mayor that they were essentially suggesting they would behead if they gained any more power. They also had a steamroller covered in blood, and the gay mayor, Brett Smiley, was the subject of their ire. These floats are going after Smiley for not being far left enough, even though he's gay and he totally supports the pride stuff. But he's probably somehow connected to Zionists, and that would be my best guess. Also, Scott Wiener, who is the Jewish representative from California, who made it legal, or who penned the bill to make it legal for adults to sleep with children in the state of California, and, of course, is running for Nancy Pelosi's seat in the Senate, had a number of issues over the weekend. He went to a pride festival in San Francisco, and he was surrounded by Antifa communists basically screaming at him to leave. I'm not going to play that video. I played it this morning, but here he is at a restaurant for a political event, and he's approached by yet another Antifa type telling him that he's a Zionist and he's not welcome and he needs to get the hell out.
You fucked up. It's going to be a problem. There's innocent children being killed in Palestine. You don't come here like it's good.
Now, Wiener used to be explicitly pro-Israel. Now he has switched his stance and he's pro-free Palestine. But it's not enough. It's never enough for the communists. Now, the same thing happened to Chuck Schumer over the weekend as he rode around on a float in his own New York City Pride Festival. He has spent years trying to push himself as a strong ally of the LGBTQ+++ movement, pushing endless progressive legislation on gender, same-sex marriage, and all of these LGBTQ-focused policies and ideologies. But again, Chuck Schumer is Jewish. Chuck Schumer is a Zionist. Chuck Schumer will never be one of the commies. And so therefore, they reject him. And it's only a matter of time before they come for his head.
Hi, everybody. So I was the first senator to ever march in this parade, 1999, and I haven't missed one yet. And folks, I was also...
Now, Chuck Schumer enjoys just a little bit more leeway in New York, but all of the up-and-coming politicians in the Democrat Party are all part of the Democratic Socialists of America. And it's only a matter of time before Chuck Schumer gets the Scott Wiener treatment a little bit more overtly. Now, finally, Joe Biden appeared at an event over the weekend in Maryland, and he also was booed and heckled from the crowd as he attempted to speak. And I just
While
need
you were
to
living your life,
get
the government
past
quietly
this
rolled
real
out
quick.
Fed Now, a new payment system.
I know that
Okay.
the Democratic Party, I fought for my whole life. I'm still fighting for it now. That's why I'm here tonight, to support Maryland Democrats. That's why.
Now, this is a really painful thing to watch. It's painful to watch Scott Wiener being attacked in public. The man was crying. I don't like Scott Wiener, but I also don't like the people that are doing the attacking. Joe Biden was heckled from the crowd. They called him Genocide Joe. At the end of the display, he was slurring. He was lost on stage. Somebody had to essentially lead him off stage. But it just goes to show you that when you placate to communists, eventually they come for you. So finally here, President Trump comments on communism once more from the Oval Office.
Well, I think it's a big threat to our nation, actually, because it's not socialism, it's really communism. They use the word social democrat because it sounds so nice, but it's really communism you're talking about. I think it's the biggest threat to our nation there is, maybe since our founding. That includes World War I, World War II, September 11th. It includes the Pearl Harbor attack. I think this is the biggest threat to our nation. People will smile when I say that, but the smart people are going to say, you know, he's probably right. It's basically introducing communism into the United States of America. There's never been anything so dangerous. Well, I think
it is quite literally the final boss. Now, I would like to submit to you that President Trump may begin to enforce the Communist Control Act of 1954. I'm using Wikipedia simply for reference here, but this law was signed into effect by Dwight Eisenhower on August 24th, 1954. At that time, it outlawed the Communist Party USA. It criminalized membership in support of this party or any other communist action organizations on the basis that communists vowed to overthrow the government of the United States. Now, when you listen to these DSA candidates, that is exactly what they talk about. Everything that they're pushing for, all of their policy positions are in effect seeking to destabilize and overthrow the United States of America, to destroy the republic. Now, a number of the provisions within the Communist Control Act have been essentially overridden by decisions made by communist judges. But it is still a law that is in effect. And even though it's in effect, it is generally speaking not used. But President Trump could make a very strong statement by using what we could in the Communist Control Act, declaring these people to be terrorists and effectively charging them and then putting them in prison and just doing away with communists altogether. I think that's honestly the only thing that we have left to ensure that these people do not take power. Now, the alternative is communists take over New York. They already have Mamdani in the office of the mayor. If they take over New York, then the people who voted for them are going to find out pretty quickly that they are not going to deliver on what they are thinking they're going to deliver on. And it will become a living hell, even more so than it is right now. And then the pendulum may swing back in the other direction. And as long as our election system is no longer fake and gay, those people may be voted out. I don't know that that's a chance we want to take, but that may be what the administration is doing, allowing these people to essentially choose their own demise and then forcing the swinging of that pendulum so that they can choose that making America great again is a much better choice. All right. Now, I was going to talk about some immigration stuff, but we'll save that for tomorrow. I'll open the show with that tomorrow because we do need to end the show. Let me say final thank yous over here on Pilled to Sean Joe for the cookie. One Thunder, thank you for the can. Sean Joe also for the cookie. You have to take loyalty oath to use the Constitution. They do not have to be sworn in. I don't know what you're referring to. You're talking about any of the people who are elected. Yeah, those people, even if they do take the oath to the Constitution, they obviously don't mean it because they seek to destroy, usurp, and undermine the Constitution. And then Sean Joe, thank you for the cookie. Finally, over here on Rumble, let's see. Principled Enigma says calling them communists makes it easier for him under the Constitution to charge them with treason and sedition. They are no longer political enemies. They are now enemies of the state. F around, find out. ZBM says, it's been a while since I've supported the show. I have to wait to get paid, so I'm definitely behind. Hope you and Lisa had a blast in Deadwood. Can't wait to meet you all. Awesome people in Idaho next year if I can come. Awesome, brother. Don't feel bad. Thank you very much for being here. I'm glad that you're still around. Also, Principled Enigma says, I've said this before, but it's worth repeating. A democracy is the first step towards socialism. Communism is socialism at the point of a gun, and that's why we have an electoral college. Yes, we are not a democracy, and these people don't even really want a democracy. They want a totalitarian state that they control. All right, you guys, thank you for being here. Thanks for hanging out. I'll be live tonight at 10:30 for Baseless Conspiracies. Good luck. God bless. And I will see you either tonight or tomorrow at 5 p.m. for another episode of Red Pill News Live. Peace. Oh, Mimi Boys X2, thank you so much. She says, thank you, Zach and Lisa. You were greatly missed. I appreciate you so much.